welcome to The Last of Yinz, a podcast review of the HBO series The Last of Us. Every week we will review the newest episode of the series, give you our impressions from 4 different and unique perspectives, as well as our thoughts on how it holds up to the game. You can join in on the conversation by contacting us at thelastofyinz@gmail.com. And remember, when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light.
Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Ed, and boy, that's a rough start. Today we'll be reviewing the episode of The Last of Us. I gotta find the name of the episode because I should have
thought he
prepared
was
better.
Mal.
Oh, that's right, I am Mal.
You want to start over?
No, that's fine. You can cut that out.
No.
Okay, can I?
Sure.
Cut it out.
No, it'd be easier just to start over.
Do you want? You don't want to play the whole intro again?
Yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't want to play the whole intro again.
Yeah,
I
can't you
have
just,
to.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, go ahead, hit me again.
Well, that's
I
your
didn't know
one.
how I wanted.
That's your one.
The thing what I got confused about is coming out of the intro what had already been said versus what I had written to say,
Yeah,
and that was throwing me off.
I see.
if you want to take a practice run at the original intro line, I'm not going to give you any judgment. Just take a run at it. Let's hear what you got.
That's the coffee machine purging the water and turning off.
Oh, geez. Okay, I was so confused. You know what? Give me a second. I'm going to edit my name out because I put my real name in because it was easier.
He forgot who he was.
I thought that was a funny start. I
I
think
did
we should
too.
have kept it.
Hey, don't worry.
He's
there's
like, oh,
gonna be
that's
more
right, I
fun.
am Mal.
Yeah, that's fine.
I thought it was cute and funny, but I'm with that. I think
Okay.
we should.
Yeah,
with
first
Mal, I think we should-
impressions.
Yeah, exactly. Try to nail at least the intro.
We'll have plenty of time to fuck it up.
Oh yeah.
And that was kind of like your buyback in poker. It's like, all right, it's early enough, but if we're like 10 minutes in, you're done.
Give me a second.
I will give you as many seconds as you like.
I'll do my best to try to not break shit mojo to this operation. One of my biggest assets and worst weaknesses in IT was that I knew how to break stuff. If there was a weird way to break it, I'd find it. Usually suss it out and resolve it, but I found it.
You were just setting yourself up for better practice.
I moved into my warehouse, and there's guys who have been doing my job for 20 plus years, and I had a couple issues where they all went, I've never seen that before.
Oh, yeah. That shit pisses me off at work.
Right?
The amount of times people say that, never seen that before. Like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah, that's not a twice in a lifetime thing. You just need to tell me how to fix this once in a lifetime problem.
So for the record too, like I could mute everybody going in, but the problem is I've done that before on the junkies and fucking forgot. Or
we all
hit
did
the
fine.
wrong button. Yeah,
Being
yeah.
quiet.
A little background noise is fine too, especially like the squeaky chairs. It just adds to the ambiance of the
Right.
fucking
Okay,
opening.
we'll try it again.
You good?
Wait. Before you press go.
If it makes you
here,
feel any better,
once, please indulge me.
I have been
Where I'm
recording
going to start?
on OBS.
Yeah.
the
I'm going
whole
to say,
time.
welcome to the show. See, there I always screwed up. Welcome to the show. Today we'll be reviewing the premiere episode, When You're Lost in the Darkness. I'm one of your hosts, Mal, and I have played all the games in the Last of Us series. Sitting to my left is Shannon.
Oh, do I have to do this now?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, it's good
hi,
practice.
I'm
Good
Shannon,
job, Shannon.
and my perspective is I like zombies and mushrooms.
But, so
You have
basically,
never
basically
tried
what you'll say is,
mushrooms.
basically you'll just say, my name is Shannon,
No.
and I haven't played any of the games in the Last of Us.
Yeah, but
No.
you say everything else just the way you did because
Okay.
you're going to be the new I like turtles kid.
Okay.
You're fine to say anything else after that, but just so that the people listening know where you're coming from, that
Okay.
you have
I
nothing.
like zombies.
And then to her left is Sean, and he's endlessly giggling.
Oh, very much a giggler. My name is Sean Scully,
And
and
I'm a
I have
giggler.
played the original Last of Us video game, and I'm watching the series as it rolls on. I have not played the second Last of Us game, and I have not indulged in extracurricular media. I've never watched any
And
of the
then to his
YouTubers
left
that I usually would.
is our showrunner, at least
Oh,
for right now,
the producer.
Corey.
Yeah. So I'm Corey, and I played the first game, no DLC, no second game, and I've been jacked up for this series, but I haven't done a lot of research. I would also venture to guess that if you checked Sean's browser history, there are some extracurricular activities.
All right. See, that's how that's going to work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We'll try that again.
Stay out of my extracurricular activities.
I don't know that you need that script. I think looking at the phone for that part might break you a little bit. I think it might be.
I just want to have it so that my part is that I did not know what I was saying because I did not know
Okay.
where that shuts off.
No, it's fine. I just
So
didn't.
I'll come off that eventually. But
Sometimes what my
Right.
thoughts are if it's a pretty basic, hey, welcome to the show, my name's Mal.
Right, and that's why I screwed up the first time because I
Fair.
didn't know where I was in that.
I just think you're less likely to stumble over a word if you just have an idea of what you want to say versus trying to read it. From my personal perspective, like,
well, it is literally just that one line.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all. Just offer my sense as they were. And again, just I don't think anybody caught that before. OBS has been recording the whole time, so we'll have this. Don't you worry.
I'll
trim it off, obviously, but like this is the file that we're going to use is on the Procaster.
Okay.
But I've got all this gloriousness on here.
So everything we've just said, in case you want to use it, you can.
Oh yeah, I can
blackmail,
use it.
baby, blackmail.
That's why I have the power.
Not legal. You had to tell us.
You knew.
You're talking into a microphone.
The microphone.
Recorded. Shannon, stop talking. You're going to run out of funny shit.
Just out of pure curiosity,
You're killing
Shannon,
it.
being a paralegal in this state and having some concept of how that works, is this a one-way recording state? Like, did both sides have to know to be recorded?
I don't remember. I remember knowing that at one time. I knew that at one point. I don't recall. No, I think Pennsylvania is you have to advise. Like,
Okay.
yeah.
Shall we?
Mhm.
Again? What shall?
It is.
Put that up a little bit. You're still going. Welcome to the Last of Yinz, a podcast review of the HBO series The Last of Us. Every week we will review the newest episode of the series, give you our impressions from 4 different and unique perspectives, as well as our thoughts on how it holds up to the game. You can join in on the conversation by contacting us at thelastofyinz@gmail.com. And remember, when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light.
Welcome to the show, everybody. How's everybody doing?
I feel welcome.
Very well.
Good. Today, we will be reviewing the premiere episode of the Last of Us HBO series, When You're Lost in the Darkness. My name is Mal, and I have played all the games in the Last of Us series. Sitting to my left is Shannon.
Hi, I'm Shannon, and I have never played the game. I am familiar that there's a game, but I'm a big fan of all zombie cinema, and I like mushrooms.
To her left is Sean.
My name is Sean Scully. I've played the original game. I have not played DLC. I've made an extra effort not to go into YouTube videos and things of that nature, and I'm
Doing great.
Okay.
doing great.
And to his
doing
left
great.
is our showrunner
I'm
here,
Corey. And yeah, so I played the first game, none of the DLC. I was waiting for the PS5 to play the second game, and I'm still waiting.
Well, there you go.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, generally speaking, we're just going to kind of start this out with our initial impressions of the show, what we thought, in just general overview, just so we don't get too deep in any one thing. And then we'll break it down scene by scene, what we thought about that. So I guess I'll just start to my left. As the person who's never played the games or have any experience with this, what was your initial impressions of the show?
I first have a question. What is DLC?
Downloadable content.
Oh, okay.
Basically, it is any additional content that
Shows
came
what
out
I know.
after the game that usually expands on the story.
So
Understood.
like video games, like you have the initial release. Sometimes they'll put out like more stuff that you can play for the same game without like starting over again.
Usually to expand on any characters or side characters or things that have been introduced in the main show.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the episode. I was looking forward to it as well. Again, anything zombie related is up my alley. And I'm also a big fan of Pedro Pascal, being
Of course.
from Game of Thrones and Mandalorian, and so I was looking forward to it.
What was your expectation? Like, were you looking forward to this coming out?
Absolutely, I was looking forward to it, and I was really surprised how intense it was so early on. I mean,
Yeah.
the scene, and I don't know when we're going to get to
We'll
speaking
get to
that,
this, yeah.
but I remember holding my breath.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was good.
Excellent. How about you, Sean?
Oh man, I was looking so forward to this series coming out. I played that game for many hours. I played it multiple times. It's just such a unique take on zombies. I mean, it's not your normal, they crawled out of the cemetery and walked towards you. This is a fungal infection.
Yeah. How about you, Corey?
So for me personally, I had a lot of confidence in HBO. Like
Yeah,
there
yeah.
have been so many, like, there's give and take, right? Like Game of Thrones started strong, didn't end so well for me and many others. But I knew that they were going to put the budget and time into it and so forth. Not only that too, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, when they made the first game and everybody was clamoring for a second one,
Yeah.
they basically said like, only if it makes sense. If we find a story.
Yeah, I believe
right?
the original intention was never to have a second one.
Right.
Yeah.
It had to. So you know that like the creators of the IP have reverence for it. They're not going to, you know, just put something out there for the cash grab. Like
Right,
it has to make sense. And yeah, I was pretty impressed. I was, you know, very blown away with how much they stuck to the original.
Yeah,
That could be for
yeah.
better or worse, right? Because the people that already are familiar don't get as much new from it, as many surprises, but there's a lot of show to come, so who knows.
But I think that works in multiple ways. You're introducing everybody to it, but then you also, for the fans, you're like, this is what you're going to expect. Now, the real question, of course, will be what did they do after this where there's no cutscenes to base things off of? So we'll see that. For myself, it was just, you know, I've been a fan of Naughty Dog for such a long time, and when Last of Us came out, it was such a it was different. It was something I probably wouldn't have normally played, although I do like these types of games. And I didn't know where that was going to go. And when I heard they were going to make a show about it, I'm like, because I think originally they were going to make a movie. And they decided against that, or that fell through, what have you. And then when this came out and I saw who was involved and I saw it was HBO, and I'm like, these two actors, I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in 100%. So.
Oh yeah, the girl with the biggest balls in the north.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was very stoked, and I was very curious as to how they were going to do it, how much they were going to stick to things. And when I first started seeing some of the teasers drop, I was like, they got this. Yeah. And
whenever it started, I saw it was coming out. One cannot help and go back and watch some of the original cutscenes from the game just to compare and see what sits side by side. And I'm sure we're going to get into it, but there are times where it's just like, I would have liked to have seen that. And there's other times where I understand that was just gameplay. We needed to trim that and make this, you know, and there were a lot of things where they buried it in very small expressions by the actors, like the Pedro Pascal. I mean, he boiled some large introductory scenes of the action and intensity into very small moments. And he sold them to me.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. Yeah. And there's lots of stuff that's lifted just directly from the game. And it's actually amazing to see how close they can get with that sort of thing. So
I want to ask right now, are we going to put money down? Is there going to be like an over under on whether we get like the over the shoulder third person game shot somewhere?
I certainly hope not.
You gotta think that just for like maybe just for a second,
because I don't want them. I think I talked about this with you off Mike, that they did that for Doom. If you remember, Doom had a movie. I think there's a Rock.
I didn't see it. And
they had this thing where they went into first person mode.
Right.
It's like, see guys, awful. It's a video game. See, it's a, see, I'm like, no. Just let it be. It has enough on its own to let it be what it is. So
as a child of the 80s, 90s, 2000s, I recall very frequently seeing in movies where they would be loading up the game before the movie was finished. You're sitting there watching like, that's going to be the video game, or this is going to land in the video game. This is a reverse adaptation. We're going from a game to the movie theater, or I'm sorry, to the big screen, the television screen, whatever you want to call it. But I don't want to see them trying to tee up video game style content. I want to feel this from the cutscene style perspective, where we're looking either through their eyes or at the whole scene. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
I mean, that was Druckmann's intention. He's like, you know, this is a story.
Right.
Yeah, it's always been that. So
I still can't help but feel like there could be like a natural transition and the camera's moving and maybe it settles over top of the shoulder for a second and then moves on.
Don't like it.
See.
Nope.
Okay. What is Naughty Dog?
Naughty Dog is the, that's a very, very good question, Shannon. Naughty Dog is the studio that made the game.
Okay.
They made the Uncharted series. What's that old game they made? Crash Bandicoot. Jack and Daxter. So they are the actual studio that made the game that's being turned into the TV show.
Understood.
They tried with Uncharted. I did not see that, so I do not know how that turned out, but that's not what we're talking about here.
I fell asleep.
There you go. I think that says all you need to know. So if we want to get into this show here, we come into the show with a basically a recording of, or a viewing of a talk show from 1968 discussing the outbreak Do you remember this? You're looking at me like you don't know this.
No. I'm actually shocked at what you're presenting here.
So in the beginning of the show,
Oh, you're talking about the show.
yes, I am talking about the show. In 1968, where
here
these
for.
these two scientists are talking to the talk show host and are discussing their ideas on what a pandemic in the future might look like. The one is very much concerned with the biological in terms of viruses and bacteria, and the other guy's like, nah, it's going to be fungus, or it can be fungus. Discussing what will happen if the Earth gets a little bit warmer and these things can survive in warmer temperatures, and then that will give them the evolutionary pressure to be able to survive these higher temperatures and therefore cross over to humans.
Luckily for that guy, he was a smoker, so he's probably long dead by the time the outbreak happens.
Yes, most of these people are all dead anyway. So we get this opening, and I think this really drives home, like, especially people who have no idea what the game or the TV show is going to be about, as to what the lead into this is. Because immediately after this, we jump to present day, which is going to be 2003 for them, for the people in the show. So what did you guys think about this opening? Did you take anything from it, or do you have any opinions on it?
I was confused at first
By the opening?
By the opening,
Okay.
and then of course, it jumped ahead 20 years. That's a big, or actually, that's more than how. Then it
You're
jumped
thinking of the
another
second
20.
jump,
There
yeah.
was-
It was
so a couple
20
of
years.
big jumps, but I thought that was an interesting way to set.
Did it? I watched a few people, especially people who had no introduction to the game. They didn't know how the actual infections or how this was going to happen. Do you think it gave you information as to, like, okay, this is what is going to be happening? I mean, did that help you understand?
Yeah. I've never played the game, but I was kind of familiar with the whole.
So you had an
thing.
idea
So
that
I
there
had
was
some idea what they were talking about. Of course, I've been reading a lot about the ants since then, because that's
the cordyceps
terrifying.
virus, yeah,
Yeah.
or
The fungus.
fungus, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And,
the ants are the primary
Yeah,
host for that
arachnids
fungus,
and,
right?
and ants, yeah.
I found that scene to feel very familiar, basically, given what we've gone through in the last 3 to 5 years. It's
Yes.
hard to keep that
Absolutely.
elephant out of the room. And whenever you said the year 1986, that look of confusion on my face came because
68.
68. I'm sorry, what dyslexia kicked in. But whenever you said that, my brain kind of broke for a second, because I've been sitting there over the last 3 years watching my state officials on television giving these sort of explanations, and part of the guy that said, no, that doesn't scare me, that outbreak doesn't bother me, the psychopathy it takes to sit there and say with a straight face to your audience that they're acceptable losses, we will survive in spite of some of you going down, and the confidence and the little smile on his face while he said it. I mean, obviously, he'd probably be in a bunker somewhere safe and tight.
Yeah. I think the part that struck me, and the part where everyone's kind of like, they're making jokes, like, where do you think we get LSD? And he's like, where do you get your LSD?
Yeah.
And then he's like, when he starts talking about, well, what if the Earth gets a little bit warmer?
Right.
And that chill.
Right.
Now, the audience they don't understand global warming the way we do. So when all the reactors I saw reacting to that was like, that's that instant, like, oh shit. Yeah, that would give these things evolutionary pressure to change to a warmer climate and therefore survive in humans.
I mean, if you're even remotely familiar with the movie Outbreak, was it Gwyneth Paltrow that was in that? I can't remember, but that was a meningitis outbreak, a fungal infection in your brain. I mean, you go down fairly quickly from those kind of infections. So if it did gain the ability, do you know anybody else if these funguses that affect ants in the way that Shannon talked about a second ago, are they able to affect the higher functions of mammals or?
I honestly don't know how those work. There are parasites that can affect the behaviors of animals, but as of right now, I don't think that's a known quantity.
I want to know, do you think that in that scene where they're taking the reaction shots of the audience just staring blindly forward, do you think that's like an intentional, like, I know they're not watching the TV, but they're watching the TV show without the TV. Do you think that's supposed to be like a, hey, you're all zombies watching?
No.
You're really reading into it. I didn't pick that
Well,
up.
the thing for me was there was zero movement from anybody in that audience when they were doing the reaction shots. Everyone was just staring.
Yeah.
And it felt like very intentional.
I think it's supposed to be us in modern days.
Yeah.
We know they're in the 60s, and the reaction they're having is the reaction that we're having,
Right.
not necessarily them in the 60s. Again,
if I was sitting there watching whoever the top health official in my country is telling me there's this outstanding threat that we have absolutely no response for, and there is no vaccine, there's no medicine, there's nothing we have. If that came up, I'd be hoping I had my brown pants on.
yeah. I think this intro does hit harder because we have gone through a pandemic of sorts. So,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I think that makes that, especially when he says, what if the Earth gets 2 degrees warmer, or a few degrees warmer, and then that that really starts. Everyone who's watching the show, who I've seen, it's just like that's when it clicks. They're like, oh, okay.
It's
And-
filling a little pop culture void too.
Thanks.
Sorry to deviate off topic, but so much of the media that we've watched in the last couple of years has been terrified to touch on pandemic or disease-based subjects.
Because they think people are going to be exhausted, and they are. But I think we're actually a little bit far enough away where I
Right.
think there was a lot of like, can we handle this show? Because we are coming out of a pandemic, but I think we are far away enough.
Well, yeah. For example, we've seen like the Disney Plus series Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The primary villains were supposed to be creating an outbreak. It was supposed to be like a viral thing or something, and they retconned that and rewrote that
they dumped
full
it.
script
Yeah.
because of COVID. Because they're like, oh shit, this is too
ruined
close
the
to home
ending
It's
of
too
it,
on the
by the
nose.
way. Ruined it.
Okay. So let's go move on to the next part here. So after that, we get an amazing HBO intro package as per usual.
Yeah. It was very Game of Thrones, right?
It's the same people, in case you were wondering.
Oh.
Yes, HBO has a type, if you will. So we get the intro with all the growing fungus, and then of course, it leads through all of our characters and things like that, all of our stars, and then of course it stops with the 2 stalks coming up, and of course it looks like our main characters. What you guys think of that opening?
It was cool, man. Like, it felt very familiar. It felt like, all right, we could have deviated just a little bit, but it's definitely on subject, and it was cool. And it's like, oh, okay. HBO is good for doing intros that you won't necessarily fast forward through.
I agree with that generally, but I wasn't really that impressed with this one. I barely remember it, but maybe if I see it again. But like Game of Thrones,
It is very Games of Thrones.
I will watch that every time.
Yep.
Do you think that that's going to be like Game of Thrones-esque, where as the story progresses, they may change the way that looks? There'll be stuff to keep
I
your eye
doubt
out
it,
for?
because what they're giving us at the very end of that is very much the way the show is going to be anyway. So I don't think there's going to be I don't think we're going to look for clues in that at any time. You might see guest stars listed in that package, but that's about it.
Did you read about any Easter eggs that might be buried in there?
Not really. I didn't see anything that
That's
stood
something
out
I'm
to
going
me.
to go after because that's always
Yeah.
interesting.
Now, one thing I will note is that intro looks almost identical to what's in the game. The only difference is it's in black and white, and there's a newscaster overlay over top of it of what's going on in the world at that time.
Maybe that's why it wasn't as memorable to me, because it couldn't relate to the game. It wasn't.
Yeah,
familiar.
that could be it. I mean, for someone like me, when I saw that, I sat back in my chair. I'm like, I was just blown away, because I'm like, this is it. This is the Last of Us TV show. Damn it!
I've only played through the game once, and it was like when it was first released. So my mind is very far away from
that
source
moment, yeah.
material,
Yeah.
right? And it was a game that I always respected enough that I thought I might like to play that again. And then I think, nah, it was just too fucking anxiety inducing. Like, I don't want to do that again. Like, it was too stressful. Some of the situations in that game were just, they were stressful, man. Like, that was a rough game. So
Right. Now, also during the intro, of course, we get all the people, all of our stars. We get our Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey right off the bat. Really good to see them, in these roles. I like both of their performances
I
in Game
was
of Thrones.
so apprehensive about both the actors.
Really?
And so satisfied when I saw what I saw.
Yeah.
Why were you
Pedro Pascal has not in his other roles commanded the same understated power that I saw from Joel in the game. Joel was a big thug of a man. You were meant to know that he was intimidating. You were meant to know that he was fully capable.
Did you ever
of
finish
anything
watching
he
Game of
wanted
Thrones?
to do. Pedro Pascal in the Game of Thrones bounces out on the stage. He is the
Freaking
cocky
phenomenal.
owner of everything. Yeah, he
I think-
clearly knows what he's doing everywhere he is, and he's enjoying.
he's not
everywhere.
understated, is what Sean's saying. Like, right? Like,
Oh, I thought he said that he. Never mind. Maybe I misunderstood. I thought he said
Yeah.
he was expecting him to be understated.
Mm.
But Joel's general extraction of pleasure from the world is almost minimal. He's a very Spartan attitude through the game, where a stoic, but you see small moments of levity, but it's
Right.
rare.
Mhm.
Pedro Pascal in the Game of Thrones comes
Oberon.
out the cock of the walk. Oberon, yeah,
Yeah, he's over the top.
he
Mhm.
even stroked that.
right.
But then did you
Once or
see
twice.
The Mandalorian too?
I did not.
Okay, so that
Oh, yeah. I think if you saw that, this would make more casting sense to you?
Well, actually, it sold it to me right there in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I can't remember the scene exactly, but one of the things that was trademarked to Joel in my mind was how he could go from loving defender to animal in a click.
Yeah.
And Pedro Pascal, I don't want to get too far ahead.
Yeah.
So
Okay, well, we'll move on. In this package, you also get the cinematographer. I'm going to try to not butcher this. Ksenia Cedra. She was the choreographer, cinematographer on Chernobyl. Did any of you guys see that?
I did.
Shannon
I
just
just watched it for a second time. It's very good.
Yes, I've not seen it, but I think I might have to go and see that. You also get your executive producers and creators in Craig Mazin, who's also Chernobyl, and of course Neil Druckmann, who is the game. And again, when I saw his name attached directly to this production,
very reassuring.
yeah.
You want to see the original hands.
yeah, when I
thought
see
Triple H was the game.
very nice.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's based on the original game. So in the next scene, of course, after the intro, we get a jump forward all the way to 2003. We see Sarah at home, basically waking up, getting up, and going to make breakfast for her father for her birthday.
What a
We get a scene.
shame for that actress
I
because she
agree.
glows so much.
Oh, she's
and,
gorgeous.
she commands that screen, man.
She
She
hit-
is so good.
All the marks, and it is a damn shame that she's only in the first episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
We'll
a
probably
little bit
see
of a
her
waste,
in a
really.
flashback. I imagine she. But that actress, I was telling Corey earlier that whenever you put, I imagine there's going to be folks that take exception with the race change. That seems arbitrary at first. But whenever I told Corey, whenever I put a picture of these two in black and white side by side, they were markedly similar. Upon doing that again,
Hold
they
on,
don't
back up.
look
I'm
the
not-
same. But it's
He's
essence.
talking about the video game Sarah
Okay.
versus
Gotcha.
not Sarah and Ellie in the TV show, but the two
Understood.
characters.
Sarah in the video game presents with a very childlike, young, 12, 14 years old.
Should probably be around 13, somewhere in there.
There's a wisdom in her eyes. She clearly has not been raised in a coddled childhood. She
The original
interacts-
Sarah or this?
the original Sarah,
yeah,
and
yeah.
she interacts with her dad in a way that's buddy, even though she had some anxiety about her own presentation. There's a card I think they show in the game where she apologizes to her dad, or says something to the effect of, "Even though I'm a pain in the butt, I still love you."
Oh, yes. What you're speaking of is in the original game when Sarah gets up. Now, this is actually later in the TV show, but when she gets up and you're able to explore as the character,
Yes.
you can look around her room and there's a birthday card she forgot to give her father, and there's a writing in there. That's what you're talking about.
This actress nailed that old soul face, that cherub young face that has deeper expression. She really, really captured it. And if you put their images side by side, no, they don't look similar. They just look
She definitely nails the attitude in every possible
added
way.
every way, and the mannerisms too. She really did.
She reminds me a lot of our daughter.
I
Yeah,
knew that
like
was gonna come out,
the grown up kid.
Agreed.
And
Full of- full of snark.
I can't help but look at that situation and go like, oh, what happened if something happened to Shannon whenever she was a baby or something, or like really little? And would my daughter have had to grow up taking care of me the way that Sarah takes care of Joel?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually think the diversity in the character made accepting Pedro Pascal's minor, what is that, South American or
He's Chilean.
Chilean, so South American. That he really did do a decent job of tamping it down, but his accent is still present, and that diverse multinationalism, like, it makes it easier to swallow whenever Joel's that Midwest Caucasian, character from the game.
Well, in the original game, they're both just white people.
Right.
These are definitely, that's a slight different change. But again, I don't think it has any effect on anything else other than, that.
Right.
After that, soon after they're, in the kitchen and she's trying to make breakfast poorly. Tommy walks in, giving some crap to his brother. And when he comes in, the guy who plays Tommy.
What is that actor's name?
Amazing. I don't have his name right here. If someone wants to look that up.
I got you.
My eyebrows lifted and my eyes lit up
but
because he
he-
looks very similar to the
He
game character.
sounds just like
Oh,
him.
yeah.
His delivery and his tone is identical to the original voice actor. When they're having their discussion, and then I don't know if you guys caught this, there's a mention on the radio of something about happening in Jakarta. They discuss whether
They
Jakarta's a
bleed the
country.
details out nice and slow.
And I definitely thought this was like a reference to when we first started hearing things about COVID, about, this thing in China, this far off distant place.
Right.
And then, that takes over the way it does.
I like the change in the order of operations too. I mean, Shannon, I'm sorry you're unfamiliar with the games here. This won't make sense.
You can discuss
to you.
this though, because it's
I'm
it's
learning.
past events.
In the game itself, I believe it starts later in the day. It's more abrupt. You're kind of dumped into the situation as Sarah looking around, watching the news and exploring it. There might be a little introduction before that, but this game starts in the morning.
Yeah.
You're talking to Tommy, you're talking to Joel. You kind of get an idea what life was like before the apocalypse.
Gabriel Luna is the actor that plays Tommy. Gabriel Luna.
Ah, okay.
I don't know what else he's been in.
Yeah,
but,
he looks familiar.
But his voice, his tone is identical to Tommy's in the game. After they have breakfast and such, Sarah goes back upstairs to get her backpack, and she goes into her dad's room. And or at least I guess we it's hard to know. I wasn't really sure where she was at first, but she grabs a watch. Now, this watch in the game, we know that that's his watch if you've played the game. I guess if you haven't, you don't know what's going on in that scene necessarily. Did you think she was like stealing money, or what did you think was happening in that moment where she?
I mean, I think they cleared it up pretty
quickly.
quickly. So, but yes, it was a little confusing.
Yeah.
Hey, if you've never played the game and you're watching her slip money out of the wallet, I mean, where's
Yeah.
your mind at? You're a parent watching your child steal off of you. That's an entirely different reaction than if you've already experienced the outcome in the game,
Yeah.
And that's why you're here, Shannon.
She also pays incredible special attention to a pocket knife.
Yes.
Yeah, I noticed that in the second viewing.
Do
And I
you
was-
guys know what that's
No, I was
from?
like, is this House of Dragon? Is this what's in this knife?
That detail escaped me. I'm gonna have to go back and watch.
I kept thinking that she was going
It's
to
a-
cut her finger on there.
It's a buck knife. Yeah, it scared me too because there was that moment whenever you get the horn beep and she gets startled while she's running her
Oh,
finger
yeah.
across the blade. I thought for sure she was going to cut herself. But it's a buck knife,
Okay.
like the brand buck. And I couldn't tell. Like I thought about looking it up and see if I could get a better look at it's not words. It's like
think
a design
That's not like
inscribed
an
on the
Easter egg
blade.
or anything from the
It looks like ducks flying or something like that to me.
Yeah. I think Troy Baker in his podcast, he does mention that it's supposed to be some sort of representation of like, she could handle herself if she needed to handle herself because she's looking at that knife. I don't get that from that. That might be true, but that's not what I got out of that.
I have a feeling if she was Joel's daughter, she'd probably be
Yeah.
pretty dangerous in the apocalypse.
But irrespective of that, she takes the watch, she takes the money, and she has to make a quick exit when, her dad's leaving the house. When they get outside, Tommy's packed up the truck and they're talking to the Joel and Sarah are talking to the neighbors, a couple of older folks. I guess the relationship there is probably the son and the elderly mother. Is that what we're dealing with there?
I feel like it's a husband, but I could be mistaken.
It is the husband of the
husband,
Connie.
wife, and elderly mother. That is right.
Yeah, that's what it
That
is.
is the relationship. And this is what I was touching on before when I said they start earlier in the day and they introduce these other characters.
These characters. Now, these are not the same character names as we get in the video game. It is a different
Right.
character that plays the neighbors. A lot of this opening scene plays out exactly. This is a little bit of filling in the background before the video game would start, but it's mainly the same things that happen. So pretty much if you've seen this and you watch the first 8-9 minutes of the actual game cut footage, practically identical. It's amazing how identical in a lot of ways.
It would start shortly. We're almost
Yeah, we're
just
not quite
prior
there.
to where the game would actually start.
They drive off in the truck, and on the back of Tommy's truck, there is a sticker talking about Operation Desert Shield Combat Vet.
Yeah, Desert Storm. I saw that.
Yeah,
So definitely military background for Tommy.
yeah.
They touch
now,
on that in the game as well.
A lot of people though talk like that's Joel's truck. I'm like, no, that's Tommy's truck.
It doesn't mean they didn't both serve too.
True, but it's very funny. A lot of the things I've been hearing people talk about, oh yeah, Joel was in the military. That's that sticker. I'm like, that's not his truck.
Right. Now, I will say that I think the worst part about this whole thing is that they introduce the dog, but then the dog doesn't go with them. Like the dog rolls out on its own.
I'm just glad the
we
dog
have
didn't
to
die.
stop
dog is not
and
theirs.
talk about that dog.
That dog.
We're going to come back to that.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, so after the truck scene, when they drive off and they're taking her to school, she goes to school and she's sitting in class. Now, I didn't catch this the first time around, but when she's sitting in there,
The kid with the watch.
yeah,
Or
the
bracelet?
reflection coming off while she's taking notes in school and catching her eye, and she looks over and this person's hand is shaking.
Tweaking.
I
yeah.
caught
that.
Almost
That-
like it. I was thinking it was alluding to that was an infected.
Yes.
I think they are.
Yeah.
I
I
did
believe
not
so.
catch that when I first watched.
So
So that's exactly what's
I
happening.
agree.
I
with
didn't get to rewatch the episode the whole way through twice, but I
Hmm.
got about halfway or 2/3 of the way through the second time. And the first time I saw it, I thought there was going to be somebody trying to get her attention, and then it
That's
was
what I
just
thought
like,
it was,
oh, it's just some detail, some guy moving his wrist. And the second watch through, I'm like, oh,
that person's twitching.
this is your first instance of not
Shit's
only that,
happening.
not only is this kid's hand twitching, but also in that same shot, there's somebody coughs in the background.
Mhm.
And I thought those two things together were
did
like
not
the
catch that.
foreshadowing.
Yeah,
Definitely.
in the game, and it's now been established in the show canon, like hand tremors and involuntary muscle spasms are a clear initial sign of infection.
Right.
So I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I was able to pause a little bit going through the second time. And when they first introduce, I'm not sure what the name of the camp is or whatever, but where they're at in 2023, and they bring there's a sign on the wall, and there's like a couple of propaganda signs, like what you're watching out for, how long it'll take somebody
Yeah, I
to
have that.
turn if they hit, up at the head, arm, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And so yes.
Yeah, what
I
comes
missed that Easter egg. That's a good one. I'll
Yep.
have to go back and look for it.
Well, so the sign next to that was it said like tremors and stuff like that was a warning sign.
a symptom.
I was right there with you. I totally missed it. Or Mal, the first time I watched it, I didn't catch that detail at all. It just seemed, like another scene. But I remember on the second time, I rewound it just to see if I could
check
see
it,
some
yeah.
other sign. But no, it's just the shaking hand.
We fast forward through this day. They don't really spend much time at the school. Sarah is leaving school, and instead of getting a school bus, she takes a city bus into the city, and we find out that her destination is a watch shop in town to go get her father's watch fixed. As he's fixing the watch, the shopkeeper's wife or whoever that was comes out and basically ushers her off. In the meantime, he hands back the watch that gets fixed. So that goes very fast. But as she's standing there, we see emergency vehicles passing in the background. We're becoming aware due to that and the shopkeeper's wife's concern that something is happening.
And then yet still kicks the poor girl out and doesn't.
Yeah, a
tell
lot of
her
people
what
pointed that
is
out.
This was one of the
going on.
first
Just
scenes
go
that
home.
I had major criticism for.
Oh.
It really made it hard to believe. Her reaction, I think, was intended to project how intense the situation was coming across in the news or whatever. But this woman hadn't seen bodies. She hadn't seen violence yet. She's reacting to what she saw on television. And I don't see a grown adult kicking a child out based on what they saw on the news. You know what I mean? Go home, get out.
I couldn't get a translation for what she was saying, but she said something like telephone. I think she got a call from somebody that said, close the shop and get out of there or whatever. Yeah.
Do we know what nationality were they? Were they Israeli?
They were, I had it written down, but I don't remember. But that was,
So suppose maybe they received a phone call from somebody back home where it was hitting.
It was Arabic
more
they were
quickly.
speaking.
Could totally be a
Somewhere
detail
closer
that
to
I missed.
Jakarta.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was Arabic they were speaking. So that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. The coolest part about that scene is when they pull the blinds down and it's a big clock face. I like that.
I was going to specifically ask, was anybody else like hyper focused on that? Because both times I was like really drawn to them drawing.
I think it's just cool.
And I was like, yeah, that is a really cool freaking thing for, for a clock shop. And I didn't notice if there was a time on it, but I wonder if it's like one of those back in 10 minutes, but except for it just has the open time.
Oh, I
like
didn't
if they
notice
open
that.
at 9 o'clock in the morning or something.
I just have
I'm
it set to
curious.
9.
Yeah, to see if it's like got the time on it for when they open. Like we're closed until this time.
I just feel like an adult would have offered her maybe at least another iota of.
And at that point, she's just like,
Yeah.
get out here. We need to close, go home.
Right.
She told her to get home. I mean, at that point, she's not that concerned, I don't think. She's just like, get home to your family, Speaking of which, in the next scene, Sarah does return home. She does make a stop at the neighbors, which she previously said that she would, where we do get to meet Mercy, the dog.
Mercy.
And a disturbingly religious Mrs. Adler, who prefers to make raisin cookies over chocolate chip, which I think is funny because the word raisin has the word sin in it.
3
Anyway.
nails plus one cross
plus
equals
3 nails
4
equals 4 given.
So corny.
Cringe.
Yeah.
Let's see. The wife makes her cookies, and Sarah takes a break from her homework to peruse the husband's DVD selection. While the focus is on Sarah, out of focus in the background is the elderly mother in the wheelchair.
And
Chills.
oh man,
What did you guys think about that?
super disturbing.
Absolutely. I had chills for sure.
They immediately draw your attention with the hand twitching, but as soon as that
Her
face
mouth
turns up,
open. Oh, wow.
That soft focus in the background, that
Oh,
real
yeah.
shallow focus depth of field is really
When
really
her mouth
effective.
opens, it's so like eye drawing.
this
for that
person. I don't know who she is. I should have written this down. Does an amazing job.
Mhm.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
out of focus, and she's doing all the heavy lifting of that scene, and it's amazing.
It's
I
kind
wonder
of
if they
funny.
use CGI to distort her face in that scene.
It was
Just,
pretty.
you just put it out of focus and give her direction.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty out of focus.
Not
but
to crush the mood after we all just got so excited about how realistic that scene was, but if anybody's lost an elderly relative and seen the face raw before the coroner gets to it,
Oh, brother.
that stretched mouth is fairly common. It's disturbing. It's what I saw when I went to see Nana.
Yeah, for me, it was like, oh, okay, she's hungry. Like, watch out. But I did. I found myself.
Nana's hungry.
I found myself in that moment, not really thinking about like, oh, the lady was really good. I was just thinking like, that's that old actress, and I was thinking like, wonder how many old actresses there are out there to choose from for a role like this. You know what I mean? Like you go like, I guess,
And that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
There's a place for anybody, in the acting world. Like you need all types. And yeah, I don't know. She did a good job. But I do have a question about the DVD.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I was going to mention this next. Go ahead.
So she asks if she could borrow the DVD.
Curtis and Viper 2, by the way.
And she says, "Oh, that's so and so's
Danny. That's the husband.
That the husband?
That's the one that was out in the yard feeding.
Oh, okay. I kind of see that's the thing I got an impression from that of like, oh, that was like their sons or something like that. You know what I mean? Like maybe it was.
Since they made no mention of a son, I doubt it.
Well, also, what was the name of it?
Curtis and Viper 2. Now,
And
the reason why you don't recognize it is this is a reference to future events.
Okay, but do you know what
Is it a real
this a
movie?
real movie? First of all,
No,
it is
it's
not.
a show invention.
Okay, do you know what type of movie it is?
Yes,
What type of movie is it?
it's an action movie. Think of Lethal Weapon.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was thinking of something like
Now
that.
here's my question though, and here's why I still think I'm right. I don't know that maybe it was the husband's, but did that seem like the kind of movie that she would watch, or just her
That's
and her
her
husband,
husband.
supposed to be polar opposites? I see.
That's my impression.
I see. Okay.
This is his movies.
Yeah. So she's the religious one, and he's like
Yeah,
she's nuts.
But it is a reference. It does come back. I'm sure it'll get broached at some point, or it could have just been Easter egg for game players of the second game. It appears in the second game.
My exceptionally beautiful wife looked at me after that scene was over and pointed out the autonomous nature of that old woman and left me with a question. Did they ever explain, was she, I don't know if I used the right word there, but was she in that state that catatonic was the word I was looking for, that nonverbal stuck
Locked
in a
in?
wheelchair
No, she's not
moment
locked in.
before? So
Oh, I just got the impression that she was old and they were treating her. This had nothing to do with the infection.
and I've seen that, yeah, where the person's stuck relegated to a wheelchair and can't
Yeah.
communicate. But I feel like she gave me the impression that there was some explanation. She's being extra quiet today, or refuses
Yeah.
to eat. That was it. She refuses
Right.
to eat today.
spitting the
and-
biscuits
well,
out.
that might be.
maybe it was an early symptom. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah,
Yeah, potentially.
And this will come into play later due to the
Okay.
speed of the way this virus or the way this does happen.
yeah.
Is that when she got infected, it was probably that same day.
Okay.
Okay.
I do want to real quick before we jump off. There's going to
Yeah.
probably be a bridge between this and a later scene, really. But what a great way to show how terrifying this outbreak is by taking just an immobile person that you could not imagine being a threat in any way
Mhm.
and turning them
Super
into a
mobile?
terrifying monster
Mhm.
that can kill numerous people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
it
and
ups
just
the
show
ante,
like
yeah.
it does not matter who. Can you imagine if like they lived next to Arnold Schwarzenegger? Like that cul-de-sac would have been gone.
Yeah, The Rock comes running down the street, zombie mode. Oh my god!
That's Doom.
First
There you
person.
go. Shortly after that, Sarah does excuse herself, taking her cookies and the DVD out. On her way out, she does encounter the dog again. The dog is acting very peculiar at this point, just staring dead-eyed into Nana's face with that
Oh,
kind of
man.
head cocked sideways, like the dog
Mhm.
knows what the hell's
So
going on.
cute.
Look.
Oh yeah, dude.
Before my cinema analysis mode kicked in, I was sitting there watching like, that is awesome. How did they get the dog to do that? And then my mind went, yeah, there's someone standing right behind her with a
Oh yeah,
tree.
my
Tree.
dog would do that.
Uh-huh.
After she leaves, Sarah does clock that, so she does note that that's happening.
Before you jump forward,
Yes,
just curious,
absolutely.
did you happen to look up or catch a reference? How many dogs did it take to do that? There were
I'm guessing that was-
multiple individual skills. That wasn't just that couldn't have been just one dog.
That is, what was the breed of that dog?
It's
That
a
is
really it's like
that's
a border collie.
That looked like a
or an
border
Our
collie.
Australian
neighbor-
Shepherd mix.
Our neighbor has a dog that looks identical to that,
Broken
and it is a
border collie.
super smart
Very
dog.
Collies
intelligent
are
breed, yeah.
highly trainable.
I would imagine that you could easily teach that dog
To
30,
sit there.
30 different things that you wanted them to do.
The actual part that dog is more impressive is later on. I'll get to that.
Mhm.
Once Sarah returns to the house, we kind of fast forward. She's sitting on the couch when her dad does return home. They talk about his day and the fact that he didn't bring any cake. At that point, she tries to,
Before you jump forward,
Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
love that actress's response. Come on, man.
Yeah, it's good.
it is pretty brilliant. I do
that
like
that
that.
bothered me too because
Really?
he says, she says, "You swear you'll get it tomorrow," and he's like, "On my life."
Oh,
Well, I'm
man.
like, how are you gonna trust this
Didn't catch
motherfucker? He
that.
promised you yesterday that he was gonna bring home cake, and he didn't do it. You know he's not bringing cake
Oh.
tomorrow either.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah. At this point, she does offer him his gift, which is the watch that she did get fixed. Interestingly enough, that watch box that she uses is practically identical, screen identical to the one
Really?
in the game.
Really?
It's amazing
a
that
plain
detail.
box.
It is a blue, perfectly square, big box, and
is,
it's
yeah,
identical.
very
This was the
plain.
redemption screen you were talking about earlier, Shannon. Whenever your first take of her was her stealing money out of her father's wallet.
And then it's explained whenever they're she's actually at the watch shop getting it fixed.
Mhm.
It does speak a lot to their relationship though, and how close that they are.
Yeah.
This
She
whole
said
scene
it cost
says so
$20,
much.
but I put 40 back. I'm an honest thief.
I know.
I love
Hey,
that.
shout
That's
out
so
to the
sweet.
watch repair guy who was like $20. That's all. 30.
I love that scene too. Yeah, he's like, okay, 30. Another thing too about the in terms of accuracy to the game, the shirt she's wearing identical.
Was it?
Yep, the
Was
color,
it?
the
Those are
color
the
of
kind of
Joel's shirt
details I was trying
identical.
to see.
Tommy's shirt identical. All that
I
stuff
remember
is
the
identical. Just
sleeves, long
crazy.
sleeves under a short sleeve shirt was sort of Sarah's classic style in the game.
Yep.
Also, Sheldon Cooper.
So, is there a lot of Sarah in the game? A lot more of her, or is
It's
she just that
very
memorable of a
similar.
This is the
character?
point.
Very that memorable.
Th-
character.
This is the point where the game is. This is where the game starts. Is her on the couch giving the watch to him. So
Okay.
everything before that is just filling in some backstory.
Okay,
So this is pretty
To-
much from
to-
here out.
get people like myself up to speed. What's happening here?
But it also
Precisely.
kind of depends because of the fact that you have control over Sarah in that initial scene, and you can explore the house as long as you want to. It's hard to say how much time she spends, but it
Yeah.
felt very similar, right?
there's-
Like the pacing felt right to me.
It's tough to communicate too much about this without putting in spoilers for the show too.
Well-
There's you know what I mean. You can clearly see he loses his daughter, picks up a
Mhm.
girl. This is going to be touched on repeatedly. Sarah, you will be continually reminded of Sarah and what Joel thinks and
Yeah.
feels about her.
And it's like a lot of people said, they're like, it's like, hey, this is not the girl from the trailer. I heard that a lot. It's like, that she's not long for this world because she's not in the
Right.
trailer.
And the game played very similarly. She's only in the very first few scenes of the game. It's just
So there is a part in the game where you can walk around and explore the house.
As
there's a
Sarah.
part of the game where you
After the
are
gift
Sarah.
scene. So
And-
That's how they endear you to her in the game.
Okay. And in that scene, that buck knife doesn't come up there. You can't find that
No.
buck. That isn't.
The-
I'm sorry. I'm stuck on
No,
the damn
that's
buck
fine.
knife.
okay, so here's the way it would go in the show. She's asleep on the couch after he comes home. There's no movie watching. They don't sit and watch that movie.
There's none of the daytime stuff
Yeah.
you saw.
He wakes her up and she checks the clock and she says, it's late. What are you still doing? Or he says, it's still late. What are you doing up? And she's like, oh, it's still today. It's like 11 o'clock. And
Right.
that's when she gives him the watch. Now in the game, it's a new watch. She says, you kept complaining about your watch being broken, and she bought him a new watch. And he asked, where'd you get the money from this? And she says, drugs. I sell hardcore drugs.
Yeah.
So that's that actual line is in the original
Oh,
game.
that's so funny.
Shout
I
out
feel-
to the watch too, because it was a cool watch. It
And that-
did not look like an expensive watch,
Yeah,
but it
you're
is a
the watch
cool
guy.
watch.
Are you familiar?
I did look it up,
It's
like
screen
to
accurate,
take a
too.
look, but they're all busted, and it's like I want to know if that's a real watch, if it's purchasable. If it is, I'm sure the price just went up.
Mm-hmm.
I actually looked up the earlier cutscenes. Like I said, I watched them and or rewatched some of the earlier cutscenes, and the watch is super accurate to the game. Even
It
the
is.
break in the screen is actually on the same sort of quadrant of the
Face.
face. Yeah.
Now in the TV show.
Before we
here-
get
okay,
too
I'm
far
sorry.
from the watch, I'm just curious. I feel like they're going to give us some. The watch is going to be further developed. Like in the game, it was a new thing. Here's a gift, and that's something he holds on to for the rest of the game. But like, I have a feeling we're going to get some information about where that watch came from in the movie. Like it's going to be used as a plot.
Oh, it's got to
Right.
be from the mom or from his
father,
dad
yeah,
or something like
Yeah,
that. For
definitely
sure.
some
I'm sure we're going to
sentimental
have some more.
value.
Yeah, we're definitely get some more background. At least another thing too, you could tell the watch is special to him, and he only stopped wearing it because it broke. When he's sitting at the table during breakfast, I don't know if you clock this, he goes to check the time, and he goes to reach for his watch, and it's not there, and he goes to his pocket to grab his phone.
I
So-
really wonder if the director of the game, whenever he got this opportunity to a redo, for lack of better terms, I mean, there was probably a lot that had to be removed thanks to the production company of the game. I mean, you have to cut things down and make it sensible
Well,
for normal people.
Yeah, he does mention that a lot of stuff that we're going to see in the TV show that's not in the game wasn't added for the movie, but was stuff that had to be cut from the game.
Right. That makes sense.
Let's see, what do we got next? They do start to. She also gifts him the Curtis and Viper 2. They start to watch that. She says she's not going to fall asleep, and then instantly falls
Love the
asleep.
little quip about the extra scenes. It's even got the deleted scenes. I wonder how bad those could be.
Let's see. And then she does fall asleep. And at that point, he gets a call. Do I not even mention this in here? Oh, yeah. Joel gets a call from Tommy, who has been involved in an altercation and ends up in jail. And he needs Joel to bail him out, basically.
That scene that conversation felt disturbingly familiar, but it didn't happen in the game, did it?
It does not, no.
No, but as I'm sitting there listening to it, my
He
brain is
does-
filling in that information.
Yeah.
Like, did I hear that in the game?
He does leave the house to go.
Bail Tommy out of jail.
Yeah. Well, he does. He's not home when Sarah wakes up.
Right.
But I don't think it's explained in the game.
Yeah,
Because he also leaves his phone behind, because in the game, his phone is ringing off the hook sitting in the kitchen.
So
you have to think too that when Tommy's talking about the person that he hit and it's not his fault, that person was somebody that was turning, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I got the impression.
He said that everybody at the bar, everybody's crazy. People are going crazy.
So Shannon, up until this point, what you've seen in the actual game, none of that daytime intro. You get the little cutscene of her sitting with her dad and having a cute moment. She falls asleep. He carries her up to bed. Next thing you see, you're dropped into the post-apocalyptic horror. She wakes up with no adults around. Her dad's not answering when she calls out. She's wandering around an empty house. Things start exploding outside the windows, and you're a 12-year-old girl. I mean,
Speaking of which,
We've all been there.
I have a question real quick.
yes.
Where is this taking place? Because I looked up Travis County Jail. I found one in Texas.
This
It
is in
is Austin.
Okay, all right.
Austin, Texas is
Okay.
where they start.
So moving on from there, he does put Sarah to bed after she falls asleep so he can go get Tommy. The next thing we hear is explosions and helicopters outside as Sarah's woken up by that. Joel's nowhere to be found. Let's see. She is walking around the house and gets startled by Mercy at the window, the dog.
Mercy.
I jumped.
Yeah, I
Name
do
Who else
too.
jumped?
I jumped
Named for Uncle Jesse.
I don't jump.
and then
easy. That
immediately
dog
started
scared me.
panicking that they're going to kill the dog, and I'm not going to be able to finish this series now.
Isn't that amazing? They can mass murder the entire cast, but one dog goes down.
No.
Boycott the thing.
She checks on Mercy, steps outside a little bit. There are, helicopters and things flying overhead. She tries to gather Mercy up to go back into the house. Mercy says, nopes the fuck out of that.
Anyone else feel like that guy in a movie theater? Don't go in there. What are you
Right?
doing?
Yeah.
The dog knows. Go with the dog.
Don't go up the stairs. Go out the door.
Run,
Same.
bitch, run!
At the same time, though, I mean, she is, worried about those neighbors and, the dogs outside. She doesn't know what's
Sure.
happening at this point.
Trust nature, guys.
When she gets into the house, she's wandering around and she stumbles into the kitchen where she steps in a giant pile of blood
That's
there.
a lot of blood.
Yeah, that's the moment I back out and go, I'm going to let someone else investigate.
Now, she doesn't really get any closer. She looks over, and then when the camera pans to the right, there's Nana there feasting on Connie, Miss
So-
Sadler.
And I gave a lot of thought to her proceeding because, best case scenario, there's an intruder. And, she couldn't possibly have fathomed that this was happening, but you don't go in.
I can't even imagine how my brain would react
I
if
would
I
turn
stepped into a room
around.
and saw that. I'd like to think my higher functioning brain would tell me run, but if that was somebody I knew, love, and was aware of what their life was like, and I felt for, I don't know that I would. I'd probably have frozen and stared at that.
If it was my
horror scene.
children, I would go charging in.
Right,
but if
right.
it's the neighbor, I'm sorry, neighbors, I love you, but
If it was my mother, I'd go charging in. You're right, but if it was, my neighbors are cool people, but
I
God
like
bless
my
them,
neighbors.
they'd be on
not
their
that
own.
much.
We do get a very nice close-up of the cordyceps infection here as Nana pulls her head away from Connie's neck,
Oh, dude.
and that is the grossest thing I've seen on TV in a while.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that was so.
Now, did you
gross.
get the idea
you
that
not
that
watch
was
The Boys?
a fungus, or did you think? I thought it was hair at first.
My wife thought
It
it
was
was hair.
gross.
She commented on that. Did
And I
you
was
see
like-
the hair hanging out? I said that was fungus. Didn't you see it moving?
Oh, it's so gross. We also
And
find
the wheezing sound she made.
Oh, yeah. we also find that Nana, who was in a wheelchair, is quite a bit more nimble now.
Oh, yeah.
They are greeted. Sarah runs out of the house, followed quickly by Nana, and they are greeted by Tommy and Joel, who just arrived on the scene. A brief stand down with a very eager Nana ends with a pipe wrench to Nana's temple.
This is
Oh,
the
yeah.
moment I referred to earlier whenever I said the change that Joel can have from being friendly and jovial to being an animal. He,
Oh yeah.
in a split second, made the decision that his daughter's life was more important than anything else, and he took that old lady down.
That's a
and-
good pipe wrench too. Rigid aluminum, 24 inch. Although in the zombie apocalypse, I definitely go with the steel version. The aluminum's nice because it's lighter, but it has a tendency to break
Break.
a lot easier. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Given a lot of
you
thought
want
to
this in the event of the apocalypse. So those up there are aluminum. Go for something steel.
Pedro Pascal turned around with the tenderest eyes and told that little girl to get in the car. His neighbor said Joel or something to the effect that caught his attention, and in an instant he turned into a bear and said,
Get back in the house." Yeah. I
shuddered.
also really like Tommy's look to Joel for direction. What are we doing here, Joel?
He looked almost confused himself.
He's like, do I pull the trigger? What do we like?
Right,
Give me direction
right.
now. I need to know. And then he's like, clock. right
That
in the
gives
side
you
of
a little something too, like that relationship between Tommy and Joel. Like Tommy, they put him as the veteran with his truck sticker and shit, and like clearly the man's good with the gun, knows how to use a rifle. But like he seems to be the one that wants to like help other people and shit. And Joel is the fucking in this situation, mama or papa bear of no f everything else. We got to protect the kid.
Right, right.
Well, he's about to talk about the scene, so I'm not going to get too far ahead, but I think Tommy did a little foreshadowing here.
Okay, I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but we'll go through this. At this point, they all get into the car and they take on out of there. I did want to point out, I don't think I wrote this down, but when they're pulling off and they run over the neighbors and you hear someone in the back, Jesus Christ, Joel.
Yeah.
But then you see they go to try to help them and that doesn't work out well
No.
for them.
And again, we see nothing else matters when it comes to Joel's daughter. Nothing.
Now, the drive from there to town, again, pretty much screen accurate.
I think that's where we got Shannon. Shannon like jumped on board with the airplanes and shit. Like holy cow!
Intense.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Right out of the game.
intense.
Right out of the game. And in the game, at this
the
point,
airplanes aren't there, but the entire drive
The
to that
airplanes
point.
made it.
Oh,
though.
yeah,
When
absolutely.
the
There is a-
airplane
there's not a
crashed,
flaming airplane.
it was
in the
serious.
game.
There's a
I mean, it was
Helicopter, okay.
serious.
Yeah,
In the game, you're playing as Sarah at this point.
In the back
You're
seat of the
crawling
car.
around the back seat of the car, hearing Joel and his brother arguing, while you're only able to look around. And as you look around, you're catching the stuff you see in the game. The house burning down. That's Bill. Whose place was that?
they say it's Lewis's farm, but he calls him Jimmy.
Jimmy's.
Yeah, I
That's
heard
Jimmy's
Jimmy, yeah.
place. That's right. That's right.
Okay, and I do have a question about that scene because she does say, you know, how do you get this? And they do kind of talk about that. You would think that that would be something that would be important if she was a character that lived on.
Well, here's the thing that I did notice about that is she is very concerned because they're saying it's only in the city.
When she was in the city
was
to
in
get
the
the
city.
watch.
You can see the look in her
Yeah.
eyes. She's like,
she's
is
like,
it? It's like if you spend a long time in the city, like she's very concerned about her time in the city.
So I suppose that was simply. I think I'm just confused about the importance of that
Yeah.
information. Especially because they jump ahead 20 years.
I think
it
it's
doesn't
just-
matter where
I think
it
it's
is
just
at that point.
because they don't know they don't know what the hell's going on, and she's like in her head, she's terrified that she's sick,
Mhm.
and because he has to console her, it's like we're not sick.
If you're extrapolating the thought to, you're learning here that God can bleed. The government does not have control. We learned very shortly here that they've blockaded the highway to contain this thing to the city, but we already know grandma's running around spreading this shit in the suburbs.
Well, not only that, but you know that it's happening in other countries too, right? Like they talk
Right.
about that Asian country.
Yeah, and
Chicago.
that's just another reason that the importance of the city, that whole line of dialogue.
That's basically. It feels to me like that's Joel's way of comforting the kid. Like, oh no, it's not going to happen to you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's
Like
exactly what it is.
he's using that to get her to calm down.
I mean, I'm
But not
a
knowing that
parent.
she was in the
Mhm.
city.
I'm not a parent, but you are. You're driving that van down 79, 80, 90 miles an hour, leaving the city of Pittsburgh, probably heading for Kennerdale. And your daughter is concerned that she has this. What do you say to her?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I would probably say
Line for
whatever I
line, what
needed
Joel
to,
says.
yeah, to keep them calm.
Calm. We do go through there. Like I said, the airplanes are not in. I did like that scene. You get the idea that maybe those planes had infected on them as well, and that's why they were so low. Or they were trying to land on the highway. I wasn't quite sure because there was a row of them, like a bunch of planes at once.
It happened in the game too that there were explosions and other things that happened where it didn't necessarily make sense to me. I understand during societal collapse, upkeep and things won't happen, things are going to explode, but these fungus zombies are not terrorists. They're not lighting fuses. So some of the damage felt like they were trying too hard to sell the initial cost of this thing. Not just in the show. I think the show replicated the game, and that's and that's the point they're trying to make. Things are going bad.
Okay. After that, we get into town, and there's mass hysteria. Of course, people going every which way. There is a slight fake out. If you played the game when they're driving down the street where that car almost T-bones them, in the game, that is the thing that sets them on foot. That car actually hits them in the game,
right? Which
is kind of interesting. So when that happens, that's for us. All the game players are like, "Oh shit, here it comes!" Like, nope. Yeah. And then when that aircraft, basically, as they're backing up down the street, comes out of the sky, and that starboard engine flies off and smacks that. I was like, "Holy shit!"
I knew you'd pay attention to detail. I didn't know you were going to be like, "Oh, yeah, it was the starboard engine."
Yeah, the right side. I know that stuff.
The introduction we have to the chaos in these scenes is some of the best I've seen from zombie flicks. Which movie was it? World War Z, I think, was one of the only other ones.
I've seen the comparisons.
I feel like, you get that sense of walking into chaos. In Night of the Living Dead, it comes on slow. Other zombie flicks, The Walking Dead, there's a modest introduction. Of course, the zombies move slower, but whenever you're first walking into these alleyways, you're seeing both live and dead people, and it's just pure fucking chaos. And you're trapped in a car with nowhere to go. I mean, they really do.
Right. Okay, so from there, once the truck is wrecked and they have to get out, it turns out that Sarah has a sprained or broken ankle. At which point,
snapped.
Yeah, at which point Joel has to carry her through the streets without the assistance of Tommy. A little bit different from the game. Tommy does follow them and get sidetracked eventually, but in this case, he's separated by the fact that his car gets slammed into by a sheriff's vehicle. As they go down an alleyway, Joel comes upon a rather hungry-looking fella. He gets the attention of this infected who sees him and then chases them through this diner. Now, this scene through the diner is actually amazing because this stunt person,
dude,
who was just throwing themselves into the role, as it were, just absolutely sells this.
A child. And
he's talking about the zombie dude.
The zombie that's chasing them.
Yeah, that dude was freaking
jumping.
I remember
over.
in that moment thinking like, oh well, at least they have no control over the throttle. It's just on or off.
Yeah,
like they just stop or go.
A lot of the extras did really well. If you're paying attention, you watch some people do face plants or what looks like serious realistic damage to themselves.
If you check the credits out at the end, the stunt page is one whole page. Yeah. While he's trying to escape from them, they eventually come up on what we will future learn is actually, I don't think this is a Fedra agent at this point. This is just a soldier who stops Sarah and Joel in their tracks. He radios into his superiors, who basically tell them what to tell them.
I want to know, Shannon, your perspective of this, because all three of us are sitting there going, "Oh no, here it comes."
Yeah, I really want to know what you're thinking at this point.
Oh, of course, I was scared.
What did you think the soldier was about?
Well, you could tell he was conflicted, even whenever he was getting those orders. I mean, they sold that pretty well.
Before he lifted his rifle, did you get a sense that he was going to attack them?
No, I don't think he wanted to. Did you? I mean,
no.
I think that, there's still a lot of confusion. Nobody really understands what's happening yet and who to look out for or worry about and what to be concerned for.
Corey, why don't you clarify some of the differences from the game to the show?
I don't know if I'm the right person for that.
In this section? There's not a whole lot of difference.
Not really.
Well, I think, and if I might be mistaken, but I feel like in the game you're actually able to hear the commanding officer in the headset of the soldier.
No. He does express more reservation. He's like, but sir.
But she's a kid. But we have a kid here, sir.
He says,
something
sir.
that really says he's about to execute these two.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like the show sold it quite as well.
Right.
At the same time, like I said, for somebody that didn't know, I just wondered how, like, you see that coming? Because all of us knew. We're like, oh no, like,
well, I mean,
my
there
stomach.
were clues. First of all, she's not in the. She's not going to be in the rest of the show.
You just don't know when.
I knew she wasn't surviving when she was going to die. I even hoped
She wasn't on the
when he
posters.
jumped. I thought, oh, good, he can dodge bullets. But of course, I knew better, and of course, I was, that wasn't the case. And he got like just
Grazed.
grazed by the bullet, but his daughter took all of it, and horrible.
The
Absolutely
emotional trauma that this game can occasionally inflict, they were relatively kind.
I'll roll
in the
tears every
scene.
time this happens. Every damn. I've seen this 1,000 times and I still feel it.
It hurt, but I still feel like they pulled the Band-Aid off a little bit faster than maybe the game did. I don't know.
I don't think it's possible for, like, in the game you are Sarah up until that point.
Right.
So they're able to establish a different connection.
Right.
Are you Sarah when she dies
No,
in the game? No,
you're
okay.
Joel.
You're Joel. Okay.
It's a cutscene. You're sort of watching.
Well, you walk them up to that point, and then it
Okay.
cuts in, and the soldier's there.
I don't remember when that switch happens. Does it happen after the crash? Is that when you become Joel?
When you're carrying her and you run past an ambulance and you
No,
head up a
when-
hill,
when
and
do
that's
you
when
s-
it transitions.
Oh, okay, so but that's when you stop being Sarah and start being him. Is after the accident.
After as soon as they get into the car wreck, you become Joel.
Makes sense.
Also, too, another thing I noticed in that scene, it's funny watching people who I watched a few reactions, like I said, is watching people who had no game experience versus those who did. When Tommy comes in to ostensibly save the day and take out that soldier, everyone who hasn't played the game gets really excited. Like, yeah, Tommy, you took him out.
Right.
And I'm like, but everyone who has played,
Oh
their
yeah.
faces are just like, because they know what's
Yeah.
next.
This is going to get worse.
Yeah.
And then that scene and the way the voice actress plays it in the game and the
That
way this
death
actor plays it
rattle.
here,
Oh my god.
her noises, that's what gets me.
Oh, yeah.
I can't.
That actress was absolutely amazing in that scene too. I mean, she did it so well. It was so sad. It was really so
One
sad
of my
to watch.
absolute least favorite podcast quips is from, I want to say it's Murder Junkies. She goes, full body chills.
Oh.
I felt it.
I know
I
what you're
felt
talking
it.
about.
And she did
Emotional
the actual
damage.
death shudder, which you see so rarely in cinema. They try to not kill people in a brutal way.
Well, we nailed it. We covered the whole New Testament in 1 hour exactly.
Well,
Now
we're-
we're kicking over the New Testament.
We're actually right at halfway point. So, this one will be longer. This is a longer episode. Plus, they're laying out a lot of information for us.
Mhm.
So, I did expect this to go a little long. When we do cut away from this, obviously, we lose Sarah in that scene. So, thank you very much to that actress. We do fast forward 20 years later. We come up on a scene where a child is limping through a nature reclaimed street to a new and improved Boston.
Right.
I think this reveal of Boston is very nice. It's very, was it Chris Mazin? It's very much him. That's his.
It gave me Fallout 4 vibes hard.
Yeah. I think it's very Chernobyl-y too, apparently.
Oh
from what
yeah,
people
like
told
the
me.
building leading on the other building. Is
But even
that-
before that, this is just the view of Boston when they first come in after the 20-year jump.
Right.
Let's see. This is where we do see when they take the child is taken into custody. When they come to the wall, they do take him or her. I think it's a boy. And then
I
they
thought it was a boy too, and we had a conversation about
Yeah.
that.
Hard
He
to
thought it
tell.
was a girl.
Yeah, I think it is a boy.
I think they're just pointing out that this kid's probably been out unkempt,
child.
uncut.
Mhm.
He's
Yes, I think it was a young boy, a very handsome young boy, and I was very confused about what happens next. He had to clarify it for me.
Oh yeah.
because-
Yeah.
She did not see that. She does not understand what that red screen on the scanner means.
right.
Yeah. So
This is like
during that
that
scene,
kid
there,
did not get any food.
yeah,
Mhm.
there's
I
a
thought he
nurse
was getting
there.
all the toys he wanted.
A Fedra agent, I'm
Wishful
guessing,
thinking.
What a-
examining this child and basically asking, where'd you get this cut on the knee? Now, before we see that, we see the sign up on the wall that tells us, if you're bit on the ankle, how long it takes, if you're in the chest, how long it takes, or if you get a neck bite. So this is in the knee. So this kid's probably been wandering around for, what did they say? What's the max? 20 minutes? No. An
No,
hour?
it's like 15 to 20 minutes for a neck or head, and then I think like 15 to 24 hours was on the foot, so it's somewhere in between. So
Right.
I'm going to say like 12 hours. Something
So
Oh,
like
so
that.
there's different parts of the body that are
Yeah.
affected more
Closer
quickly.
to the brain.
Closer to the brain. Okay. Now I am confused because Grandma was just about eating them. So how does this little boy get away with just a bite to the ankle?
Well, and I had that thought too, right? Is going like these are not the zombies that I think that you're used to. I think they get some sort of sustenance from the victims. But if you go back to the talk show at the beginning, they say their only prerogative is to spread the
Disease.
disease to every host possible. So I don't think
Familiarity with both the game and or these diseases would give you a clue you're going to get later. There's information you don't have yet about how this thing progresses.
Plus, the Adlers are locked in the house with Grandma, and we assume that Grandma, during one of her visits to the hospital, they talk about taking her into the city to the hospital. So we assume that she got infected like at the hospital or in the
like
city.
picking up MRSA.
And
or
then she's
something,
locked in that house with her family. This kid, wherever they came from, they could have escaped an attack and got up with their lives, but got bit.
Mhm.
Not only that, but both of the elderly people that were victims of Nana, neither one of them was dead. They were both
They did
still
get up. You're
alive.
right, and it seemed very quick. But you're right. I think they were a bit closer to the brain.
Well, not only that, but you don't know where dad, grandpa, whatever you want to call him, how he sustained his injuries. It could have been from the struggle, right? He could have got injured other ways. But when you see Nana chomping on the neck and you see the fungus stuff sticking out, I think that's an indication of like it doesn't do that much damage. Like they're not, just chewing chunks off of people.
These
This
aren't
is-
There's a
Walking
lot of
Dead
blood.
zombies that are digging into your stomach. You know what I mean? These things are just trying to pass the infection. in the most
This might be a good
efficient way
idea to
possible.
point out the difference of infection between the game and the show. So in the original game, it is transmitted by bites, of course, or through spores.
That was what I didn't want to say for
Spores.
spoilers reasons.
No,
She
that's
doesn't
fine,
have
So
that
like you
because-
fart
information yet.
and you can get infected. How does that work?
Well, no, just
You'd be in
because
trouble.
they would start sloughing off
Mal,
spores.
can I pause you real quick before
Yes.
we get to this? Let's go. I know there's going to be a scene coming up here real soon where we talk about one of these things in a extinct state. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
let's wait till that, and then we'll
Sure,
explain
sure,
to her
sure.
that there.
Okay, let's move on.
Before we get too far away, there was something I wanted to say about that, which has completely slipped my mind, and we can cut it out.
Okay, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
I wanted to know, how does that device work?
Ah, So I mean, it's just a testing. It's a show invention.
I
that
Do they
believe
put
it's
it
a
to the
blood
back of their
test.
neck or
they
something?
touch
like
it to their skin, and then it detects whether they're infected or not.
All
And
right.
a red-
Imagine like a diabetes prick kind
That's
of
what I
thing.
was wondering. Does it take blood or is it just like a scanner?
I don't think that's ever explained. It's just
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know. They
They're
say
taking
you're
a
going to
tech.
feel a tickle, but I assume it's like the thing that you use to prick your finger for a
Yeah, that
diabetes
makes
shot,
sense,
but
right.
a reading all in one. Like, oh, it's going to be a real fast little sharp.
and I
thing.
think it's pretty clear that a red screen is bad.
Yeah.
The
Except
thing
for
I
to her.
wanted to say was about the little boy. So in
Yes.
the video game, the way you're introduced to how brutal this world is and the way they treat the infected is you're walking through the settlement with Joel and a character we haven't talked about yet, and you see people who are being lined up, tested, and then ultimately executed out of the corner of your eye as you walk past, and you get a sense that life is kind of cheap in the face of an infection. I think the writers, when they use this child gimmick in the game, really stepped it up a notch and let you know there's nothing sacred when it comes to
Mhm.
protecting our people.
They also give the idea that children are a little bit more of a rarity in this environment as well.
Right,
Yeah.
right. More precious. They definitely gave him a little better treatment than they give the adults when they pull him.
And then, of course, she tries to console the child when she knows damn well what's going to happen next, and then they kind of go
How
from there.
chilling is that to watch a woman smiling at a child's face?
But you can still see it in her eyes, like, "Fuck," you can see it that she's like, "Okay, this is what I got to do next."
I agree. And you can look at that as her being cold, or you could look at it as the way I did of her going like, this kid's about to go.
Oh, I
I don't
didn't
want the
think
kid
she
to be
was
scared.
cold.
I want the kid to
So
like be
sad.
comforted and happy in that moment of going,
Yeah,
And I didn't immediately catch that was what was happening there. And even when later they have the body, I didn't realize it was that little boy. It didn't.
I think they try to
Yeah,
make
I
you
do
clock
explain
that
that to
by
me.
when they do a close up of the shoes when the kid's
Right.
walking up.
Yeah.
And I
Those
remember the close up
shoes,
on the
yeah.
shoes, but I didn't. I don't know. I didn't put it together. But
and
Corey
that's
had
an
it.
important
Yeah.
point too. Pedro Pascal's the one who dumps that kid's body on the pile, and you see he is emotionless when he does it.
Yeah. He, I go to that scene next. Basically, there's a fire pit where they're disposing of infected bodies. A mentally exhausted woman drops the tailgate of a truck and to reveal that kid and basically says, "I can't."
I can't.
And then she taps who we learn is Joel on the shoulder. He picks this kid up and just like just dumps that
I'm
kid.
gonna
is
take a
what it is.
moment and just compliment you on your notes because your terminology and everything, you're like really doing a good job of painting pictures.
Yeah,
really
no, I
are.
really do. I feel like you're leading this well. But before we get too far away from it, that kid, whenever he looked her in the eyes, he told me he knew too. That little actor did a good job. That
Oh,
boy had
absolutely.
both relief and fear painted on his face, and I bought. I enjoyed that.
I mean,
Right.
really, he probably just watched his whole family die. And
Right.
that's,
Yeah,
he
we don't
was-
know what he came
I
from.
wonder
Right.
what motivations the directors give a child to get that sort of response. What do you tell
Directors
a
don't get
kid?
enough credit, man.
Like,
They
hey
don't.
kid, you ever rescue a dog? We want you to look like a rescue dog at the pound because that's like, like I want somebody to love me, but I'm also terrified of everything.
Mhm.
So we want your gerbil to be in mortal danger, and it probably might, maybe not live.
Where does gerbil come
How's
from?
that make you feel, kiddo?
Okay, so after that, we do follow Joel on his way through the streets where he witnesses a Fedra justice punishing people who went outside the wall by hanging. That's fun.
Okay, what is Fedra?
Fedra is I don't have the acronym written out. I did not research that. But this is basically a loose interpretation of FEMA,
Okay.
the federal task force that goes in like hurricanes and floods. But this is a much more militarized version of that. Joel walks through the streets. He gets it's the Federal Disaster Response Agency.
Okay.
Joel continues where he meets up with a Fedra guard, apparently to exchange rations for drugs, basically becoming a dealer of hardcore drugs, which I find is really funny.
This is an important note, given some of the political details that are going to come out later, that Fedra is the current indoctrination of the federal government as it survived the apocalypse. It is now an autocratic system where, everybody's kept in line because they can't, they'll put everybody at risk if one of them steps out of line.
Yeah, militarized.
Theoretically, this is the United States government as it exists after the apocalypse.
It is, another, to borrow from another zombie video game, Nero, from
Not familiar.
I made you play the game, Days Gone.
Oh,
Nero is the same thing kind of over there, I think. But anyway, no one else
Nero reference, but Days Gone was such a great game, and something we'll probably touch back on. I mean, some of the similarities here.
Well, it is a zombie game for PlayStation.
As Joel continues on, he does meet up with Fedra agent where he deals basically drugs for rations, and clock this person because we will run into them again.
Yes.
Once.
We do meet up with we meet Tess talking to a Robert. And again, this is, let's see, do we make mention of this? Oh, when he's talking to the Fedra agent, he's working on acquiring a battery to basically, we find out that eventually he wants to try to find Tommy.
That is not from the game. That is something they put into the show.
This was a different way to get to Tommy rather than the game. The game doesn't really make it obvious as to Tommy comes in as an afterthought later on in the game. We actually don't even hear much from Tommy until midway through the actual game.
They do a really good job of painting a picture of who Joel is without Joel being in that scene.
The Tommy scene is important to give you an idea.
Well, no. I'm talking about whenever Tess is like kidnapped, like she's in that chair, and you think, okay, she's being held by people in power, but these people
Tommy.
in power are only holding her because they're terrified of Joel.
They're more smugglers. Yeah, they're just smugglers who did
That
Tess
is
and Joel
Tommy
wrong.
that's sort of whining to Tess,
What?
right?
No.
I'm sorry.
Tommy is not around.
Tommy. I'm confused.
I was gathering they were kind of like the post-apocalyptic mafia or something like that, right? Some sort of.
They're just other smugglers.
Isn't it bizarre to watch somebody who has somebody tied to a chair be afraid of them?
Afraid. It was interesting. I did not like that character. I did not like
Tessa's characterization in this is way more intense than she was in the game.
Not
She's
the
great,
other
though.
guy.
And before we get too far away from Robert, did anyone else expect him to rip his clothes off and say, "It's time to party"?
No.
He looked like Party Boy from Jackass.
No.
Oh, no, come on.
No, I did really appreciate though the strength they painted of Tess. She comes off as so capable. He answers to me. Reminded me very much of the original Avengers whenever they think they're interrogating Black Widow and she's like, they're giving me everything I want.
I don't want too much information going forward, but is she going to be a consistent character?
I don't know if you can.
She's in the show. There's no real way to answer it.
Okay.
Without giving you
there's no right answer
we'll find
to
out.
that.
We'll find out.
I just don't want to give any future
Understood.
information. While she's negotiating for her release and basically promising that Joel will not hurt him, an explosion happens from an exploding Fedra vehicle, apparently killing his cohorts, and apparently at that point Robert flees. We don't see him at that point. She takes to the streets where she's captured by some Fedra agents.
Right.
The next scene is where we get our introduction of Veronica, of all people.
You just glossed over there. She's captured by some Fedra agents who were seen having a shootout with the Fireflies for the first time.
Yes, they are having there's an attack in the street. I mean, I guess we get that impression based on the exploding truck, but yes, you're right. Absolutely.
I'm not sure we know it's the Fireflies at this point, but we see there is.
They don't really point that out, but in the previous
she
scene,
says, I'm not a Firefly.
Yeah,
that's right.
I am not a Firefly. I don't shoot, but they
she's just bargaining for her life. She knows she's trapped from both sides. She's
Right.
like, fuck it, I'm just gonna lay that out. We see she's calling herself Veronica, but we know this is Ellie, chained to a radiator, being questioned and counting to fuck you. That scene was great. That was in the trailer.
It was enjoyable.
It was a really good introduction to the
Why
character,
the
I
name
thought.
change? I didn't pick that up.
I think she was just trying to hide her own identity. She was protecting herself. I don't know why they chose Veronica, but I think that's
Yeah, you're
why.
a prisoner. You know, you don't want to give them too much. I do have. I'll wait for the scene later on though. Good.
It could have to do with her trying to dodge being returned to her source of origin too. We know they already know.
She doesn't know where she's at.
She doesn't, but they do.
At that point, yeah. At this point, we see Joel making his way back. He does go. Now, this is again a show invention here. We don't see this in the original episode, in the original game, where he's talking to a radio operator who says they have not heard from his brother Tommy in 3 weeks. He talks about there being far other worse things out there as raiders and slavers and such. But yet, Tommy's okay.
Again, they show that Joel is a badass because everyone's going, you can't skip, but nobody does anything about it.
Yeah, he's
when
like,
jumps the
he
line.
doesn't even acknowledge they're saying that he's cutting the line. He talks about meeting them at Cody Tower. We don't know what this is yet. Joel heads home to medicate and fill out his triptych across the country and what he's basically going to do. And then interesting thing, Tess comes home and gets into bed with him.
Yeah,
which
that
we do
was
not see in the original
interesting.
game. So they are drawing a closer relationship between these two than they had in the original game.
Yeah,
Okay.
in the game, there's very little sense of any physical or romantic intentions between these two.
And on top of that, the character model in the game looks far younger than Joel is, where she looks age appropriate for him at this point.
Can
Although-
I pause? We glossed over the Ellie introduction.
Sure. Go
So
right.
fast there.
Yeah, we did.
That actress, her ability to hurl a swear word like a lightning bolt was one of the
yeah.
reasons I appreciated her coming into this. And whenever she did that introductory scene, she delivered all the way.
Well, I did describe her as-
6, 7, 8. Fuck you.
Fuck you.
She was the character in Game of Thrones with the most balls in the North.
She
Like,
was.
That kid was commanding adults the moment she stepped on a screen for the first time, and that's one of the reasons where I felt really strong about that casting. Like, oh, that kid, she's something Mormont, and she's
from Bear Island.
Lyanna Mormont.
She kills the giant walker. The giant
she's
White
a
Walker.
she's a
Oh,
bad
she
mother.
does. That's right. I'd
Right.
forgotten about that. She is.
She was good in his Dark Materials too. I don't know if you guys ever saw that or not.
I
She
don't-
plays a
I've
sort
not
of
watched
ancillary
that.
character, but she
good.
again is able to carry that attitude that just like she's a bad little bitch, you know.
On the test subject, I don't know that like we can say right now that they really are painting. I imagine there's a good possibility we'll see a romantic relationship there, but knowing Joel, it may not. And to be honest with you, yeah, she climbs into bed and puts her arm around him, but that they have an intimate relationship. We don't know if it's romantic or not.
But I think that just draws there's much more of a relationship there than is ever revealed in the game.
Okay, so
I'm-
in the game, can you tell me how do they know each other?
It's not discussed. And I'm
No?
sure
I think it's the same thing. Like
Yeah.
20 years pass, and you just
Shit
assume
happens.
that they've been working together.
they're both capable and they're teaming up. I think we are going to get more of that.
It's
think that-
heavily established in the game that they work together for a long
Yeah.
time and are a well-known pair.
But there's no origin.
No origin.
Okay.
Not yet. Now, like I said, a lot of this opening, this first episode is largely cutscene. You are interacting with your characters at that point, but it's largely cutscene. This is taken right from the game. There's obviously a lot of space in the game where you're exploring, and I think they're going to use that space to flesh out their relationships. I think we're going to get a little bit more background, whether it's just references or whether direct conversations.
Yeah,
I
the
think
director's-
that will happen.
Trying to make these characters relatable.
Yeah, I think the impression you're supposed to they're conveying here is imagine you're like an archaeologist looking for a treasure, and then all of a sudden Indiana Jones and Short Round walk into the room, and everybody's just like, "Oh shit, we're screwed." You know what are we gonna get? Yeah,
We missed the introduction to a very important character here in the scene where Ellie's being interrogated, and the lead Firefly. I
Marley.
believe
She doesn't
it
come in
is.
yet. She's only being
I
interviewed by the.
apologize.
No, you're
I
fine.
apologize.
Yeah, she's not there yet. Let's see where we're at here. The next morning, Joel and Tess discuss their plans to recover this vehicle that they're going to need or the battery they're going to need for the vehicle that they're trying to get. The next thing we do see is Marlene. This is where we get the introduction of Marlene and her people discussing the Fireflies' declining situation,
Right.
including the need to exit Ellie and the Fireflies from Boston and head west.
Right.
So she hands her cohort there a note. We don't know what the note says, but we definitely get the impression that there's some very important information on that.
for sure. I do want to point out. I think that we've hit the point where I could talk about it now. I find it a very good comparison that watch, when it didn't work before Sarah got it repaired for him, sat in that drawer forever. and now that watch is shattered. You see that the
Mhm.
watch is broken, and he
Ellie
never
even
takes
says
it
that.
off.
She says
now.
your watch is broken.
Right.
I don't think he
And
responds
yeah.
or reacts.
So
Yeah, that definitely gets, you see that he's wearing it.
mhm.
Yeah, he wears it.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're
but
wrong.
Marlene, I might be. Marlene, the actress that played Marlene, also did the voice for Marlene in
Yes,
the video.
this
Did
is-
she? No
This is the
kidding.
one overlap from the game where the voice
Ah.
actor reprises her role,
And
and she does
she
amazing.
crushed it. She
She's so
obviously
good.
they modeled the character in the game after her then, so
It
to
looks just
see-
like her.
She grew into this character.
Oh, that's
I mean,
fantastic.
the age adds that wear and tear that she could not probably have done whenever she voiced that character. She looked too young. And that she now looks hardened, and the way she plays the character. I mean, who else is going to lead an ad hoc resistance but somebody who gets shit done
Yeah.
regardless?
She's great. She does a really good job, and she did a great job in the original game too. So absolutely, that's a great casting. And again, if you're going to keep anybody, I think that is a good keep there.
And she really projects that sense of the rules are what they are, but I'm getting shit done regardless of what happens. You know,
She was in Sons of Anarchy.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I love the
I
follow
haven't watched
fucking
that in a long
orders.
time.
Yeah.
What do I tell them? To follow fucking
fucking
orders.
But whenever like you're sitting there, you know, if you've never seen this, played the game, if you have no understanding of what happened or what's to come, you don't have any concept of what she's putting at risk by putting. You really have no concept of what she's putting by putting
Yeah.
Ellie in Joel's hands, but she does. And while you're sitting there with no concept of that, thinking that's a little risky of her to do, she has
also
no choice, and she
Mhm.
lays that out.
Yeah, she also breaks down what the Fireflies are supposed to be trying to do.
Right.
And I think you said the exact line.
Yeah, I
that-
mean, it's
love
really
that line.
important, I think, to point out about the Fireflies. And the reason I pointed out the Fedra being the current incarnation of the federal government, the Fireflies, my understanding is that their intention is to reinstate all branches of government
Yes.
and essentially reunite us with our liberties that have been lost through the transformation of the government via
Mhm.
the apocalypse.
Right. Let's see. We do get a very brief scene here, and actually kind of is kind of weird to see this, is where Joel and Tess are trying to get information on Robert's whereabouts. It happens in that little square where this guy comes up to Joel and says, if you're lost in the darkness, he's like, if you tell me to look for the light, I'm going to break your jaw.
fucking jaw, yeah.
And he's like, well, I'll just step over here.
Oh yeah,
now."
he fucked right off.
Nice
didn't
knowing you.
Yeah. And that's all that's all that scene gives us, which is really funny.
My wife moved away from me on the couch. I laughed so hard at that.
We then head back to Ellie, who is now being visited by Marlene. She returns her backpack and her blade, and they discuss the situation, incling how she ended up
The
at with-
Jansport backpack.
yes, the Jansport backpack, which is
Totally 90s.
exactly in the game too. And how she ended up in Fedra schools, and
Right.
Marlene says that she put her there.
So that's one of the things that I was like, okay, I'll ask later when it comes up. In any of the games, is there anything about that? Like,
Yes.
Okay, and we don't have to broach it anymore because it's supposed to be obviously a part of the story building, and I'm probably better off not knowing.
Yeah,
but
there-
it was kind of like, okay,
It's
are you my
never-
mom? No, clearly.
Do I look like your mom? No,
She
no, you don't.
explains the military school background to them right after they find out she was bit in the game.
Okay.
I also like this where she's like, a bunch of terrorists. She explains, and she's like, terrorists? Was Riley a terrorist?
Who's Riley?
Yeah. I was wondering.
Do
I
we know
assume
who
that's
Riley is?
well.
or
I
we-
know
assume
Riley
that's
is.
something they're going to give us,
Yes,
but I
know
don't
who
know.
it is.
They don't even need to. All you need to know is that Ellie trusted Riley.
And exactly. So you see this, and it's a long beat. It's like a good, maybe not 20-second, but like a good 10-second beat of
Enough.
silence.
A
where
pregnant pause.
You know that this Riley means something to Ellie.
She also clearly wants to go back too, like, right? She wants to go back to the military school. She says, "I want to go home."
Well,
and
that's
it's
all
like,
she knows.
right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make it, that they made a point of saying it.
Yeah.
Is that she so much she wants to go back to military school, or she wants to get out of the hands of these people who she doesn't know?
Well, they
She
make
knows
the
Marlene.
point of having that
But has Marlene
conversation
walked in the room yet?
where Marlene
I know.
says she doesn't know who she is
Yeah, she
initially.
doesn't, you're right.
Marlene says,
That's
"I
who I
know."
am.
She calls her Ellie, and she
Right.
says, "Oh, yes, I know who you are. I'm the one that put you there."
Right.
And I'm fine not having that information right now. But she says, "I want to go home," and she goes back to military school. And so there's a weird dynamic there of you just said that you were the one that put her there, but you don't want her to go back and you don't like the place. So it was clearly some sort of, hey,
So-
this is the best place for you.
Will it be explained at some point why she has this assumed immunity to?
I think that is definitely going to come into play. I think
Okay.
it's going to be a major.
So you guys know because of the game. but
Well,
I'm
let me
still in the
pause
dark.
there.
What we know
Will
and
it
don't
be
know is
explained
largely in the air.
why she has this immunity?
We don't know that.
I don't think that is ever explained.
And why was Marlene putting her in military school? I don't understand that either.
I think the implication, at least it's given in the show, it was for her own protection.
Yeah, my
because
thoughts.
she knew already that she had
No.
No, Marlene's traipsing
no.
around the world. She's a freedom fighter. She's blowing shit up. She's running from the feds. She can't be carrying around a toddler. So she dropped her off at the federal school.
But she's not her mom, so how
No.
did she end up in this?
I think we're
going to
find that out.
Okay.
I believe so.
I don't
but
know either,
I
but-
think the implication is that she put her there because of the fact that she knew that she would be safe, not because she thought it was like the best place in terms of like this is how I
It was
want you
the
to
only
grow up.
place to take her.
It was like, yeah, this is the place that we could put you. But they also are so like Marlene doesn't know that she's immune because of the fact that they're testing her every day,
That's
the same
why.
test over and over
They're
again to
still trying
make
to
sure
learn.
she's not showing symptoms of going
because
to
she
turn.
was attacked, and they're watching
Yeah.
and waiting and seeing that she's not being
Right.
affected.
Right.
And I think the back relationship with Ellie and Marlene is established with the Riley statement most of all. As how do they come together? I don't think is necessarily so consequential. It's just that she saw a child needed preserved, stuck her in the school. You know,
We'll find out.
They leave a lot of. I feel like they leave a lot for you to fill in, just so
Right.
that you can take control and ownership of the story a little bit.
Right. We're still just introducing these characters. So I
Right.
think that's what it comes down to.
There's a lot of introduction, but it was well done.
You got to
Which is
watch Mal's
exactly
face.
Why this is better off being a television show versus a movie? Because you had said that they were discussing possibly make a movie. It would have been so rushed,
Yeah.
and
Well,
Yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah,
And-
sure.
And what's funny too is because I remember seeing some of the original game. I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about that. They're going to do that. Oh shit, I forgot about that. They're going to have to do that. So yeah, TV show, best way to go.
Absolutely.
Absolutely no way they could have done this in an enjoyable way for the
No.
game players.
They would have to make huge
Movie.
cuts.
But
Game
Sean,
players, or be able and also be able to explain it to people like myself who haven't played the game.
for sure.
It'd be like trying to make a 2-hour cut of the Lord of the Rings, the entire series. It just wouldn't work.
Well, so the reason that I was telling you to maintain eye contact with Mal is because you'll see a reaction on his face that I saw where you're like, oh, maybe they're going to blah, blah, blah. And you can see in his face that that's something that gets answered somewhere that me and you don't know about.
Gotcha.
Like he knows something that we don't. So clearly it's already established, but we're not there.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it.
We'll get
we're I like this because not only are we not ruining it for anybody that might listen to this, but we're also not ruining it for the people that still have the element of surprise being capable here.
right.
No, Shannon, you create a wonderful check and balance. Every
Oh, that's
time
what I like.
feel like
That's why I keep looking
rattling
over.
off, I see that pink shirt and I'm like, yeah, shut up, Sean. She's got more to learn here.
she is instrumental as far as I'm concerned. Her perspective, like I was telling her, like you have to do this because you are going to be the representation of all of the people that are experiencing this for the first time. Ask the questions that they're going to ask, and that's helpful. Like, yeah.
And it leads me to so many more thoughts when I'm sitting there trying to figure out how this would look to somebody that doesn't have the foreshadowing.
That was one of my
that I
biggest
got.
concerns. I mean, even if they just got the video gamers on board, that would have been a successful show. But if you don't get the people who have not played the game, I think you lose a lot. Let's jump forward here. Let's see. Joel and Tess move through the underground to track Robert, and we stumble into our first fully infected corpse. You
That
guys were
is
talking
so
about
cool.
this.
Is that the one plastered to the
Yes.
wall?
Yeah, it's
That
very-
was cool.
Okay,
Very
so-
much Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And they actually give you, they say this one, I believe the word is this one's popped.
Oh, that's right. That is what they said.
Yeah, I didn't catch that line.
So
I thought
remember
they
that.
said expired.
No, I'm pretty sure he's right.
I'm
This
pretty
was
sure
popped.
they said
but
popped.
they do discuss whether he got infected down there or got infected and came down there.
Yes,
Right.
they did.
And they said
that
it's
too.
new. They'd been through there recently.
Yeah.
Because her
Well, no,
reaction,
they
Tessa's
didn't say
reaction
recently.
was like surprise. You know, any reaction. Anybody's. She put the. He said this one's popped. She said, "I know." It just surprised me, and I think you're right. That's
So-
the terminology.
But just to clarify, that what they say is he wasn't here the last time she was down there,
Right,
but
okay.
doesn't say how
How
long it's
long,
been
right.
since she's been down there.
Right.
So Shannon, you read a little bit about the fungus and how it affects the insects. It
Mhm.
drives them to a place high up where they can be eaten by a bird and, pooped out, or it spreads spores through the air, which is what Mal started to touch on there before. So these things wander around trying to mechanically spread this thing through bites and cuts and touches or whatever method they
Right.
can find. but they keep wandering around until they've consumed so much of their host that the host body can no longer function. It can't wander around, so it lays down wherever it's at.
Are we just be careful about whether you're treading into spoilers or not.
Like a real fungus, anchors itself to the spot, sets up shoots of fungus material which pop and leave spores into the air.
And this
that's
is
what we
where-
saw.
Yeah,
There
and
was a
what I had
post-pop
read
corpse.
about that that ant thing was that their main goal is to end up on like a vein of a leaf, and that's where then it can
Right,
thrive and
right.
and spread further.
And
So it's what she does her research too.
Yeah, and the idea behind there is obviously funguses reproduce through spores. Now, in the game, that is very much present. In fact, they wear gas masks when they go into these places. But the problem is that they decided early on that they can't do that. They can't have the actors in gas masks. It's just too difficult production-wise.
You answered a question I had. I was
Yeah.
curious if we were going to have them in the game. Your character, every time they come onto an area where you can see spores, the air's foggy or smoky, and it's actually an important plot line with Ellie too. Joel, being not immune, has to snap on a gas mask every time he goes through one of these areas. Him and Tess both, and you see him in the game repeatedly pull this thing out of the pocket, put it on. You transgress through wherever the smoky area is. Ellie never puts on a mask. And they're repeatedly in the game, Joel says to her things to the effect, how do you breathe that shit in?
Yeah, don't want to get too far into that.
I understand.
So, I mean, again, that is a conceit that the show has made. They're going to make it about tendrils and,
No
things
gas
that stick
masks,
out.
though.
No gas mask. There might be scenes. There are some pivotal scenes, especially like in the second game, where those gas masks do come into play.
Okay.
I'm really curious if they will, especially if they get a second season. Listen to me. When they get a second season, where they might end up donning them, but at this point they have gone against that.
I mean, it was very much a plot point in the game.
Right, but you can't have actors in those masks. That's just going to be too impossible.
Although I would make the argument that if anybody's proved that you can, it's Pedro Pascal, because
I
he
know.
did it for 2 seasons of The Mandalorian and counted.
And he took the mask off once, or was it more? I
I
only
just-
recall one.
There's I think there's 2 scenes in the show altogether.
But I think-
but
But
regardless,
he
that's
still
where
sold it.
that's
He was a
why we
great
knew.
actor.
that he was capable, is because he acts behind that mask. Or a lot of times he's not the body in the suit, somebody else is, but it's so much body language and just his delivery,
Voice.
which actually they make him very flat in that too. You know what I mean? So he doesn't emote much anyway, but he still does a great job.
He
Right.
expresses so much with his body language
Yeah.
in this show.
Body language,
Like
in
that
the show,
scene we
that
were-
show, and even you're right that he can't emote too much as a Mandalorian. That being said, though, just the way that his tone still like kind of resonates,
It's really, really hard to sell big emotions with minimal action. I mean, he really does a good job of staying so sedated. If you're not paying attention, you might catch that little raise of his eye, might miss that little raise of his eyebrow or that his shoulders tensing up. But he does it all. It's really impressive.
And he doesn't even have Baby Yoda to play off of.
I came to the Mandalorian for Grogu, but I left loving Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, I
before.
spent so much time staring at the actors. I haven't combed the background for Easter eggs yet, which is something I frequently do.
So as we move on here, let's move on. We do get to what I'm calling the deal here. We do have worlds colliding with Joel and Tess meeting with Ellie and Marlene. I did really like the scene when they're coming through the hallway there. I like Tess's comment that did someone put a piano in front of this door? They push it out and find that Robert has been killed and they can smell the gunfire in the air.
The piano comment, is that an Easter egg from the game?
No, they're just being funny.
I'm
that
curious
there's
if the
someone on that door.
construction corner comment was from the game. This has been construction.
No, but I did
corner.
like that. That was a nice.
I'll try to make this super fast because it's not relevant in any way except for the word came up. But we were discussing the other day, and I think being killed by a piano falling on me would be my second favorite way to go.
We were talking about that.
Death
Yeah.
by misadventure.
I mean, what beats that? A safe? What's the number one way to go?
Moving on.
Okay.
I think he enjoyed Roger Rabbit a little too much as his youth.
As they come to the door and make their way down the hall, I forget if they see Marlene and her assistant, or did they get encountered by Ellie first?
Ellie first.
Ellie comes bursting
I
through the
think,
door with her
yeah.
knife, and
She
Joel
does.
dispatches her into the boards.
Oh my God.
You
It's like
missed or at least didn't discuss the scene where Marlene walks in, throws Ellie her backpack, and Ellie immediately
No, we
rifles into it and grabs that
The switchblade.
Yeah, I said she recovers her backpack and her blade. That was part of the introduction to Marlene.
Yeah, because I said the Jansport thing.
My wife was curious if that switchblade was the same as the buck knife earlier. It was
Yeah.
not.
No, this is the knife that she will carry through the rest of the
Right.
show. They also encounter the battery, which they find was a piece of garbage and didn't work.
And he tried to sell it.
he was trying to
twice.
resell this battery twice. It is at this point when a deal is struck that Marlene needs Ellie to go. She's in no condition. Her assistant's in no condition because she's missing an ear.
Our
And-
whole crew has been mowed down in a Fedra firefight.
and Fedra's on their way, and they need to get them the F out of there.
Oh yeah, and they really kind of convey to the people that don't know or don't understand or haven't picked it up already how important she is, because she says we're taking every Firefly is going with her to make sure she gets there.
Right. And they also mentioned that they make a deal basically that if they get if the Fireflies give them a truck, which they basically assume that it's going to be a Firefly truck fully equipped, and this is a good deal to make.
It's going to have cool green neon lights.
Trucks and guns and supplies, anything you want or need, she said.
Yes.
And when Ellie said, and he says, deal or no.
She says if any of this goes wrong, they shoot her.
Yeah.
And she's
Ellie
like,
says,
deal.
Really? That
That
quick?
That quick, huh? I also like the
At which point she reaffirms how important she says every Firefly's on their way for you. Nothing is more important than you.
Yeah, I do
My
like the
people will make
standoff
this
where
happen.
he points the gun at Ellie, and then she points the.
Don't
they all
point it at her.
Yeah,
Point
but
it at me. That was a good
It's
detail.
very, very Jules from Pulp Fiction. There, point the gun at me. Point the gun at me.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens
Yeah.
after. Any
So
more
his,
comments?
his
Yes.
daughter died in 2003. This
Yes.
is taking place in 2023.
And
correct?
he's 56 years
So how-
old.
Yes,
That's
and
a
because I
killer
do
there.
remember the earlier scene whenever she said, you're 36 today, and I'm thinking, wow, he's definitely. I mean, I love Pedro Pascal, but he's definitely not 36.
I was sitting
I
there
said
going,
the
I'm
same thing.
37.
I got the impression he was lying anyway, but anyway.
but so how old is Ellie, and what year do you think she was born? So she was clearly born
After the
post-
pandemic,
right?
she's supposed to be 14.
Okay, all right.
That answered that question really easy.
Damn.
So she's like essentially the same age as my son.
Or more importantly, the same age as Sarah.
Right.
But
Oh,
she's
yeah.
much smaller and much scarier than Aaron.
The new trio of Tess, Ellie, and Joel.
I don't see Aaron taking on Joel anytime soon.
They move back to Joel's place, and Joel and Tess discuss outside while Ellie is forced inside, and they close the door. She discovers a book of Billboard 100 chart history and starts going through that book where she discovers a code of sorts. 60 says nothing new.
She tracks
this
that
was
shit
great.
fast.
70
That
new
was a
shipment,
great
and
detail.
80s we don't know yet at that point. Let's see. Tess returns to the streets.
I think they did a really good job of painting a picture of what this life is like now, because inside of the domiciles, the apartments and stuff, everywhere you look around, it's all very utilitarian stuff. Like they have a china cabinet that has like hardware organizer drawers in it and tools
No
and
more
stuff. And yeah, like there are very, very few frills. And I also thought it was really cool the way that there's just wires run everywhere.
Yeah.
Like they are, routing electricity however
temporary.
they can. Oh yeah, it's
Lots of
very,
extension
very,
cords.
yeah.
I mean, that scene was great for setting up the bond between those two. You get a sense of how she cracks his method of thinking just by her watching his reaction to how she set him up.
This also keys in this scene where he's like, he's going to take a nap. She's like, "What am I supposed to do?" I'm sure you'll
Figure it out.
And she walks by and says, "Your watch is broken."
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a good that cluck. I
Joel
caught
doesn't
that.
flinch. He's used to people saying it, and he doesn't give a shit.
Yeah. She also points out that she's never been that close to the outside, and she comments how dark. It's funny. I never noticed that until I replayed that section of the game. She says the same thing.
Does she?
It's so dark out there. She
It is,
says
yeah.
that.
Very, very. I didn't realize this before, but that moment where he like props down for the nap is very Indiana Jones. Like
Yeah.
the person with Indy's always like very stressed out about the situation,
taking
and
a
he
nap.
just like lays down
Yep.
and puts
Yeah.
the hat
The
over
hat
his
over his
face.
face.
That's a very Indy thing to do.
Indiana Joel.
Yeah.
Let me just slow us down
Damn.
real quick and
Just got
put,
my
our,
Halloween costume.
put us all in Ellie's shoes, okay? You're a 14-year-old girl. You've known nothing but the post-apocalypse. You know nothing but this Fedra encampment, your escape options. You're looking out there and you're saying it's so dark out there because you've seen the lights, the lanterns, the home they built for you to keep you alive. But the city, as it used to stand, is the wilderness.
Yeah.
All those buildings are empty. They're full of monsters that want to murder you, and that's all you know.
Yep.
How terrifying.
Yeah, because I mean that's very much like she is a child of that environment,
Right.
and Joel knows what it was like before.
Right.
And,
She grew up in a world where monsters are real.
No Pittsburgh in this. That's
yeah,
disappointing.
well,
In the game that comes later.
It does come later.
Yeah.
And the travel from Texas to Boston goes through Philadelphia.
But
not through Pittsburgh.
whenever the game starts, though, whenever she's looking out the window, isn't that Pittsburgh in the background
you
of the
crossed-
house?
I thought
We're
you
still in
crossed the
Boston.
6th Street Bridge
We
or
are
something.
still in
at some
Boston at
point.
this point.
Oh, at this point, yeah.
I'm in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So hold on.
Go on.
Where we're at now is in Boston?
Yes, we're in Boston.
So how did he get from Texas to Boston? Like what
20 years
went
Yeah,
by.
I realize that. But is there any
we would
further
assume that was where the work was, and that's where Fedra was.
Oh no.
If I was a-
I actually know exactly why. By inference, I'm assuming, but the whole thing, if you go back to the show, right, the talk show at the beginning of the thing says what happens with the temperature rising. Well, they're in Texas, so the further north you go, the colder it is, the safer you are from this
the mutated
fungus,
virus,
right?
or fungus.
Because it needs a certain temperature. So the warmer area you're in, the more likely of a hot spot.
You're
No
also
pun
going to get a
intended.
seasonal break from non-sentient combatants in that scenario. Like every winter, these things are going to freeze up and give you a little bit of a break. So going north makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a reason in The Walking Dead we never saw winter, or we
He
did see a winter scene in the last season, but not before that.
he should have stopped in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's prettier.
I think we do get a. Well, I don't know. I
don't wanna jump
We
ahead,
won't
yeah.
see. So in any event, she also breaks the code. He falls asleep, and when she
She
basically
talked about
mentions-
Fight Club.
Yes.
I know not
Don't
that
talk
good.
about it.
Sorry.
When he wakes up, she says that the radio came on. He asked what song it was, and she said, "Wake me up before you go go."
It went something like,
Yeah.
"Wake me up before you go."
Yeah.
And he's like, and she saw
Shit.
the look on his face, and she's like,
That's right,
80s
80s
means
music's bad."
danger.
80s means trouble.
Code
cracked.
broken.
Code broken.
That was beautiful. I love that scene.
And that again,
Me
like I
too.
say, that's a great way of showing how they're going to get along together later on. These two are going to become very syncopatic. They're, if that's a word, I might be using that wrong.
I listened to someone else who was like almost complaining at her snarkiness. I'm like, a kid that grows up in this, if that's all they know, they're going to just be a normal 14-year-old kid.
Are you
Right.
kidding me? I know
14-year-olds are full of
14-year-olds
snark.
that act like that in the regular world. You don't need an apocalypse for a kid to have a shitty attitude.
Exactly.
Puberty.
A 14-year-old girl, they're lucky she doesn't rock out and just stab everybody in their sleep.
At this point,
Otherwise, Matt
Tess
would be
comes
saying
back.
that.
Tess comes back, and they start to move on. We head out to basically we head outside the wall for the first time. Everything is great until we encounter our druggy Fedra guard, who is just let's see,
Les douche.
Le Douche. Who is about to try to rework his contract. Sorry, very nice.
I had to.
He's trying to rework his contract with Joel regarding the drugs, let's see. And then he ends up he basically tries to coerce them into giving him, or not better deal. He's basically trying to extort them for everything.
Oh yeah.
And then he meets the point of Ellie's knife. Ellie knows what's up. She knows that if he scans her, the jig is up.
Right.
It's at this point that all hell breaks loose, and this
And he does manage to scan her because Tess
right.
sees the reading. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And we get another sense of how Joel reacts whenever someone threatens what he finds.
Well, I
even
think what we're getting
modestly
here is a
precious here.
clear case of PTSD.
Right, right.
As soon as
And he
that gun
just
goes up,
explodes.
boom, that boy just explodes is the word.
And something I didn't catch until there was a director's commentary after the show or something like that, but he beat that guard to death. It wasn't like he just punched him unconscious.
Yes, that's clear.
Boy,
I
did
didn't
you
actually
watch the
think it was
director's
quite that.
commentary? I didn't know that there was one. I'll have to go back and
I don't know. I didn't see it, but I
might
mean,
be
it's clear that
mistaken.
he
It could
does
have been,
that.
you know, HBO sometimes just plays
tuned
random
after the
shit in
show.
middle or
Okay.
before a
Yeah.
show. It might have been from that.
But after that happens, then Tess sees the discarded tester on the floor, and it has a bright red light on it.
And her reaction, the actress was freaking
Tessa's?
phenomenal. Oh my gosh. Yeah. She's like, Joel. And I'm like, wow, she sold that.
Oh
Really?
yeah, absolutely. And then Ellie has to basically explain herself, like, they don't know at this point why this girl is important, but they soon learn that she is somehow.
Yeah, interesting that they're able to
immune.
put that in their back pocket though and just move on. Like it does seem like it should have been.
Well, they had to go. Shit was coming.
Yes, and Ellie's the one that says that we have to go because they're going to be here.
Yeah.
But well, for as far as they know that they're listening to an infected person.
Who do you
Yep.
think stopped the execution of the girl? Who do you think was more like in that moment, Joel or Tess in any other situation would have unquestionably just executed the girl and moved on. And was it Joel or Tess that pointed a gun at her? But one of them called it down and said,
Well, in the original game, Tess points the gun at Ellie.
okay. Yeah, I think it was in the show too, but I could be mistaken. But yeah, we're gonna put her down, and then someone stops.
It's a confusion, and it's just a confusion. Shit's happening. Like 25 things just happened in 5 seconds.
I think the viewer still feels like that too. Like you're probably, Shane, you're gonna have to tell me.
Yeah,
but
what
I
did
feel
you
like
think?
you're probably sitting there going, "What the fuck just happened?"
Oh, and I had to rewatch to really, get the full sense of what was happening. Even the part where whenever Tess starts freaking out, I didn't quite pick up the fact that red scanner was something that she was looking at until the second watch. And I did, though, like I said, I felt like they moved on a little quick. But that being said, you're right. A lot was going.
They were under
down
pursuit.
at
They knew that as soon as that went down, they had to get the F out.
Mal, I also have to ask you because I think you'd be the one that would know. Do you get? Do they give us a sense of how long they've been with Ellie so far? Like, was there a period of waiting before they take her and leave?
That was a day.
Was it a full day they were with Ellie?
The sun was up when they were dealing with Marlene.
Okay,
the
so
sun went down. They take her
here's
out.
the reason that I ask is because it might give them some question to go, well, we've been with her the whole day. No matter where she was bitten, she should have started to turn
and
by now.
because just the fact that she hasn't turned yet is enough
is
for Joel
that
to
like
pause
going
and say,
like,
okay.
wait,
Where
hold
that
on.
chart comes back too, telling the
Right,
time,
that-
she's been on
that's-
the arm. Not,
Exactly.
it should have hit
That's
her by now.
something that might be going through the minds of them as Joel and Tess or whoever. Just going like, well, wait a minute. We've been with this kid all day. How come? That would give you enough pause to not put her down instantly and then get that. Okay. Plus, there's also they can't get what they want without her. She's the key to them getting the truck. And
Yeah,
to
there's that
getting
added
everything
weight.
else they need. So it's like you're kind of killing your only leverage too.
I was just going to say, can we tip our hat to the effects department just a little bit?
Oh
There?
my God,
In
yes.
the game, it's hard to express healing on a wound in a game. I mean, it's pixels on a screen. But whoever did the makeup for Arm, and I was looking for it because I was familiar with the game. I mean, it looked like it had healed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I'm sitting there like, okay, that's not
Her
a fresh
wound in the
bite.
game looks like it's bloody.
It's bubbling. It's like blistering.
Like
as
it's
I
still
recall.
an active something that could be happening. Like
Yeah, it's very
this,
red,
This one
healed.
definitely looks like a healed scar.
Right.
Did you say was it 3 weeks?
3 weeks is
Yeah.
what the game says. For sure. I just watched it, but
The show
too.
says 3.
Yeah.
a lot of the lines were really delivered line for line.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but a lot of them.
After that, of course, we just get the wrap up of them making their way through the gates there, and then we get the picture of the Boston with the building laying on its side against the other building, which
Yes.
is iconic
That
in the
was
game.
Right.
so cool.
Great end of the world show. Like nobody's maintaining this shit anymore. It's all falling down.
Yeah.
And how long the world really might or might not last after the maintenance stops. You know.
Yeah.
But was that Joel beating the shit out of that guard? Was that, in your opinion, was that the first time we saw Joel see a flash of his daughter in Ellie? His reaction was very
Other
clearly
than
when
through
that gun got
emotional, I
pointed
don't
at
think
her.
it's definitely brought up quite that directly. I mean, obviously, when you have a show like this, you can show, don't tell. It's very
Right.
easy to show that.
I mean, they've already shown us it's not that she's a child that protects her. He'll put a child in a fire pit without thinking too hard about it.
I also just think it's just
by the way,
reinforcing.
I forgot I wanted to say something about this earlier, but when they were doing that, so the first you get the bodies and them like pushing the bodies around in the fire, but then he's cleaning out the ash pit afterward
Yeah.
and shoveling those bodies up essentially in the buckets. And I'm like, oof, that
a
was a
morbid-
gruesome
People
People
thing.
who have no exposure to how a crematory works or how a body burns don't know that every so often a man has to go in there with a metal rod and bust your bones down. Your skull is
Yeah.
still whole. He has to break it up with a stick. And that's what they were showing there. That person was reducing the ash pile
Wow,
with a metal
thank you.
rod.
I watched that scene the whole time and go like,
This
I'm
was
glad
pretty-
we don't have smell-o-vision.
Oh, man.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
gotta be terrible.
Can you imagine how bad a post-apocalyptic world would smell?
Just the burning bodies, you
Burning
know what I mean?
bodies,
Like,
shit.
And
hear
I
piss
actually
and-
did consider that whenever we were watching that scene.
I did too,
Wow,
yeah.
that's gotta be. Stupid.
Remember, sewage has not
I mean,
functioned
have you
for
even
a long
smelled
time.
like a dead animal nearby? Oh,
yeah,
much less
dude.
a burning
Oh, you
dead animal.
hear that from people that have been through like crazy wars and
Right.
like the Holocaust survivors and stuff like that of the smell of burning human flesh.
Human flesh,
And
the
like-
smell of blood sticks with people, the metallic smell, the smell
Yeah.
of what's the word? putrefaction whenever a body decays has a very unique smell that you don't forget.
Yeah, this is not something that anyone would want to go through. So I'm very much looking forward. I imagine everyone else is looking forward to tomorrow's episode, at least as we're
Yes.
recording this.
I'm extoted. That's
Extoted.
I cannot
excited,
wait.
stoked, and psyched all in one. It's a Rick and Morty reference.
Well, I mean, do you want to wrap this up? Do you have any other thoughts or discussions before we put this thing to bed?
Yeah, this is very illuminating. Thank you guys.
Yeah, I'm
for
fucking
filling
excited,
me
and I just
in.
want to say I had fun.
I'm more curious as to anybody as you. Is this being the only Last of Us medium you've ever consumed? How do you feel moving forward to that next
Oh, I'm
episode?
very excited. I'm very excited. You know, and like you said earlier on, HBO, you know, they usually produce.
How
know.
you feel about it isn't so interesting to me. Is what do you want to see?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
Wow.
What's
well,
the question?
I want to see Ellie, you know, get where they're going. That's you know, and in a safe place because she's a youth, and I like youth.
I'm not going to get what I want to see because it's been 20 years. But what I want to see is Mercy.
Oh, I know.
Wouldn't that be
Mercy,
sweet
The
if a
dog.
That's I
dog
even said. I
popped
said, I'm
up?
glad they didn't kill the dog, and he said, "Well, the dog's dead anyhow." We're 20 years later.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's true, but I didn't see it. So
Well, if that's it for right now, I guess we'll wrap up the show.
Hey, it's
That
been a
is the
pleasure.
Last of Yinz podcast. Please join us again next week, hopefully,
yeah.
and we will take care of the next episode. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good time. I enjoyed myself. I hope you guys did too. And yeah, look forward to doing
Thanks,
it again.
Corey, for hosting this. Thanks, everybody.
Peace out, everybody.